right. Well, I'm vamping. I wasn't muted. Uh, For once, it wasn't. For once, it wasn't my fault. I just want to make that
Okay,
clear. Uh,
okay.
Hey, there I am. I just wanted to welcome you all to our Marvel movie rankings. I'm Patrick Hackett. I'll be joined shortly by Ron Diana, and Shannon and Ashley are here with me. We will be reviewing only the MCU films, the Infinity Saga, as it's called. We will not be talking about Spider-Verse or Venom or anything that came before Iron Man. You know, if you really want to talk about Spider-Man 3 and emo Spider-Man, I guess we can do that. But I mean, who really wants to talk about him dancing in such a fashion? This Saturday night, 9 p.m., we are doing a fundraiser for the Cast Members Pantry. It's helping out all the cast members who were furloughed during the pandemic. We're going to be doing our usual shenanigans. Every show that you've seen on WDWNT Live up until this point in time is going to do at least 10 to 20 minutes. I'll be on with Universal Orlando News today over at about, I think, 11:10. And we're going to do an auction just like we do during the marathon show. So there's a lot of really great items coming up for the auction. Ron is currently in a meeting. He does have another job besides this one that he has to go and do things for. But I'm really happy to be here. I'm excited to be raising money for the Cast Member Pantry. These are the people that are always there. They are really the lifeblood of the Walt Disney Company, and they should be taken care of during this time. Oh, tonight, 9 p.m., we are doing Disney Park Memories. I know that Tyler has been collecting a lot of photographs and videos, so you guys can all get a peek inside the world of what it is to be a WDWNT staff member. Hopefully there'll be some from Rex the Halls. I think that's the only event earlier. I've been to the 30th. But as soon as I hear the sweet, sultry tones of Ron Diana's voice, we will get started again. I got the chat room opened. I have the Facebook chat open as well. Are we on Facebook? It doesn't look like we are. Looks like I just see the live logo there. All right, there we go. Facebook is working as well.
Hi.
So,
Hello.
Hey, there we go. The box will be Ron. Yeah. So the lovely Ashley and Shannon are here as well. Why don't you give us, without giving anything away, just a little overview of how you feel about the whole Infinity Saga?
I mean, I personally, and I'll go ahead and do my little list preface, because growing up, I was always very much more a DC person. I mean, Batman animated series was one of my favorite cartoons growing
it's
up.
So good.
I mean,
so good.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Batman, the original Batman in '89 was my favorite movie at 3 years old. So I was definitely very much more DC oriented growing up. So I didn't actually get into Marvel until the Infinity Saga. I never really was into the X-Men movies or emo Spider-Man. Like, I had seen them, but I didn't care. Like, these movies actually made me enjoy Marvel movies and Marvel characters and introduce them all to me. So I find it very, very cool. I enjoy the saga a lot. With that being said, I don't have a whole lot of background knowledge on these characters to judge how they are in movies versus how they are in the comics, because I know nothing really of anything of their comics. I apologize, but I'll go ahead and preface my list on that. It's really just how I feel about these movies based on just being the movies.
Yeah.
Shannon, how about you?
I'm kind of on the other side of things. I was always more into Marvel stuff. Hey, Ron.
Hey, sorry about that, guys.
Okay.
Got a new case just this morning to start, so...
Oh, lovely.
Yeah. We were just talking about how we kind of got into Marvel, how we feel about the whole Infinity Saga. But yeah, so I watched the, original Spider-Man movies. I was never really into DC stuff. I don't know if that was just kind of like what my parents took me to because I was a child. But yeah, and like for the, Infinity Saga as a whole, like there are some ups and downs, but overall, I enjoy it. And I'm also like not a big comics person. I know stuff about the comics, either because I looked it up or there are a few comics that I have read. But generally, I'm a movie person. I'm into the movies. Yeah.
I have seen almost every single comic book movie that's been released in my lifetime in the theaters. The Infinity Saga has by far been my favorite. The X-Men movies have all been hit or miss. But I am very excited to do this. I went back and forth on my list several times. So I'm looking forward to hashing this out with everyone.
It was hard.
Saga,
it was genuinely hard.
Yeah, and this is definitely like what they did with the Marvel movies, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is something that has never been done with film before. And that, DC has tried to replicate and other franchises have tried to replicate, and it just hasn't worked as well. Just all the interconnectedness, for better or worse. So.
All right, you guys ready to go ahead and start this list?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's kick it off.
All right. We're going to go ahead and start with, we have the 23 films that have been released so far. Black Widow would have been 24th, but that's still coming out. But coming in at number 23, I think by a decent amount, is Thor: The Dark World. To me, it's just the weakest story. No character development really goes on. It seems to be a rinse and repeat of a lot of the things that happened in Thor. We eventually got some of the payoff in Ragnarok, but I don't think it was worth just kind of this lackluster story and not great action either, I think. So it kind of, to me, failed on both of those fronts. What does everybody else think?
My bottom three, I could definitely rearrange. I have Dark World at 21, but
Me too.
but I have at 23 Age of Ultron because that movie just felt like it was when they started to take themselves too seriously. And I was fair. Dark World also kind of started that, I guess, but Age of Ultron was just kind of messy and too dramatic, and it was when they started to have too many characters. But I definitely agree with everything about Thor: The Dark World, which I have seen Age of Ultron more than Dark World. So maybe when I finally rewatch that one, I'll change my opinion. But
I thought
mine. Oh, sorry, Patrick, go ahead.
I thought I was gonna have Dark World the highest, which I also have it at 21. I went with 23, the one that really doesn't even play into the MCU at all. It doesn't have the same character that we've become used to seeing, and that's the Incredible Hulk. It's a bad movie. And if you're counting that movie, you also have to count Ang Lee's Hulk, which I don't want to because that's also a bad movie. So Incredible Hulk, 23.
Well, Ang Lee's is not include what I think originally Incredible was supposed to be like a reboot quel. It was the events of the Bana Ang Lee film could have happened, but they didn't necessarily have to for that. And I think that's one of its weaknesses is coming in. It's not an origin story because they just did one, but it doesn't necessarily use that origin story because of things we see in kind of the opening montage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do reference it enough that it would be, included, but it's so bad. Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
No,
it's my number 22.
Yeah.
So
the original
then
Hulk would have
mine
been
is probably.
I think the bottom. Ang Lee did a beautiful job filming it, I would say, and it has some of the amazing sequences where it looks like comic panels, but there's no story to it at all. I think. Well, that was kind of the problem with it. Supposedly, those original 6 Hulk comics is why it got canceled. Was there wasn't much of a story going on, and he didn't get his own comic back for years because of that.
Yeah. So mine is probably then the most controversial, because I actually have Captain Marvel as my number 23.
Wow.
And it's the one. So here's why. I missed seeing it in theater. I did. And I wasn't like, I genuinely missed it somehow, but I wasn't excited to go see it. And what I saw of her in Infinity War and Endgame didn't make me want to go back and rewatch it. Like, I don't, it's the one movie I can say I don't care. I know that there's probably important, like, universe overall important plot points, especially after watching the end of Far From Home. But I still, like, I'm going to have to sit down and force myself to watch it, because her as a character, even in Infinity War and Endgame, didn't capture my interest enough to want to go back and watch a standalone movie. Just didn't.
Wow.
I'm wearing a Captain Marvel t-shirt. So I have it much higher. But I've also only seen it once, so I can't, like, make a huge argument for it. But I mean, one of the reasons I like it is because I do feel like it is more standalone from a lot of the other movies. And I find that I like the standalone ones a lot more. Like, it really doesn't have that much connection to the overarching plot, except that she exists. And, like, Nick Fury's in it, and Coulson is in it, but, like, there's not, like, huge plot points with them necessarily, but no, I really like it, but we can get to that more, I guess, when we get to it higher up on the list. But
so yeah, I don't like Dark World. I think it's the most likely one for me to skip if I'm watching these through. Like, you could tell Portman wanted to be done with this.
Yeah. You could tell that she was pissed. She was over it.
I think the reason I don't have Dark World, like, at the end of my list is because I don't have, like, super strong negative feelings about it. Like, it's just kind of like,
I don't
like,
either.
I've only seen it the once, and I'm not like I don't want to rewatch it, but also I'm not like, oh, Dark World is so frustrating. Like, I'm just like,
if it was on in the background, you would keep it on. You wouldn't like, oh God, I gotta get this off.
Yeah, you wouldn't turn it off. I would actively turn off Hulk. I wouldn't turn off Dark World.
Yep.
Now, I just rewatched Hulk, The Incredible Hulk, for the second time, and it was, my roommate and I are kind of rewatching the whole MCU in order, but it's been like a year since we started. But we rewatched The Incredible Hulk. She had never seen it before, and we had a lot of fun watching it, just kind of knowing that it was bad and just, like, accepting it for what it is. So I have kind of more positive vibes about it now. It has some kind of fun moments, but it's not good.
It's not, and my biggest problem with it is, especially now that we have Mark Ruffalo as Hulk.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, what could it have been?
So
He could have gotten to do the standalone movie.
Yeah.
See,
like, Edward Norton is not, like, a bad actor, but he's like, why is he Bruce Banner? It feels weird.
No, he wasn't right for it.
Yeah.
And he took it entirely too seriously.
I want to get to that when I have it on my list, but
yeah.
So yeah, Thor, I have it last. What I have at 22, I actually think might be a worse movie than Thor, but at least I think it's more like character development, so I have it a little higher, which is Iron Man 2, which I really think is a bad movie, really horrible main villain. Hammer, or is it Hammer?
Yeah.
No,
Hammer
was great, but
oh yeah, he's wonderful. He just won an Academy Award.
Like, Rourke is such a great actor that he was just
fresh off The Wrestler too.
And he decided to just not even chew the scenery. Like he licks it and then just walks by. Like it's an uncommitted, over the top performance. It's just weird, and it's not. I
told my roommate before this, I was like, I'm gonna have to be the one who likes Iron Man too.
Oh no, you don't have to.
I mean,
but
no,
I have Iron Man 2 at like number 12, which is right in the middle. Like I don't have it that high. I mean, compared to you guys, obviously I have it high. But
yeah, I have it at 19.
Like
for the same reasons.
I definitely have I'm biased towards it because it's kind of like, for some reason, a comfort movie in my home. Mainly because my roommate is like a huge Black Widow fan, and so she loves Iron Man too. But so she would rank it higher. But no, I think it's just like a fun movie. I mean, Hammer is such a fun villain. I agree that like Whiplash is not as interesting as he should be. Yeah, I just like it.
I think there's just too much going on. Too many little side
There is a lot
plots.
going on.
Tony's sick, losing the company to Pepper, the Shield investigation, the Hammer thing that's not quite aligned with Whiplash's things. It's like five things, five plots going on.
Don't forget the parrot.
It was a lot. Oh yeah, bring me my bird.
I think there's so many other movies that I rank lower than it. If just because I have more fun watching Iron Man 2 than
this is going to be
so
bad.
many other movies.
This is going to be bad.
So again, I mean, I had it at 19, so I kind of get it. Like, this is one of the few that I actually like went back and rewatched because I didn't remember it. And I forgot just how much, like, again, still in my opinion, a bad movie. But to Ron's point, like how much they actually set up in that movie, especially about Tony's character. Like you watch through the whole progression of Tony, and that actually set up a lot of it. Like even, how he decided to do Ultron and leaving behind a legacy and what my legacy is going to be. A lot of people say Iron Man 3, but it technically started in Iron Man 2 when he started fire selling everything and thinking that, because he was going to pass away and setting up his legacy. That all started in that movie. And so, I mean, I do give it credit for that.
It's also a weak attempt, I think, at doing they didn't want to do the demon in the bottle storyline and make his alcoholism villain.
Yeah.
So they gave him
that's why they made up the story that he was sick.
Right. So they made up a different type of facing his own mortality, own inner demons in a separate way. And it just seems like he reverted too quickly. Like if you combine this and his self-doubts from Iron Man 3, it just keeps repeating on his own. He has an arc that keeps repeating, and that's not growth. That's just kind of lazy writing. Is like, this is what we need Tony to do, is kind of give up his little selfishness and be a hero again, give up his fears and be a hero again.
I will say devil's advocate about that though, is he clearly becomes a superhero later in life. Like he was kind of already cooked at that point as far as his personality goes. So like it does kind of make sense that he does start to backslide a little bit and then has to remember and grow almost again, because he doesn't completely revert back to the way he was in Iron Man 1. He does slip up, but to me that kind of makes sense and it's part of what makes him human. Because nobody learns a lesson the first go round. It takes a while and effort and things continuing to happen to really learn the lesson.
But I think every Iron Man story is that him overcoming one part of these things. And I get that is good storytelling, but it drives it to he comes over just being nonchalant about what he does to be in Iron Man 1. Here he comes over he overcomes his, just depression again, and then he comes over fear, comes over his arrogance. It's just every character flaw he's got has to be the plot of one of these movies.
Yeah. I do definitely think the Iron Man movies get kind of repetitive in that respect.
He doesn't have great villains.
I think that's the problem. Yeah. And I think that's why they fall back on making it something to do with him more, because the villains are probably some of the weakest, especially trying to translate now versus how they would have been back in like the 70s. I mean, you're trying to make this feel like a realistic universe and not a comic book universe. I think they've definitely struggled with that with his characters. And
part of that is they introduced Strange too late, because a lot of his villains were the technology versus magic. So if Strange had been introduced first, you could have had the 10 Rings actually be the Mandarin.
Yeah.
And you could have had
that's a whole different argument.
We'll get to that one later.
Yeah, you could have had Fing Fang Foom come in from an alternate dimension. You had good villains for him, but they didn't. They wanted to make it too realistic, so his villains had to be internal. And yeah, he is the character that goes through his internal villains, but it doesn't make a compelling action movie that way.
I think all of the Marvel characters tend to go introspective more with their villains, with the exception of maybe Batman, where you see like the dichotomy of the Joker Batman thing. And I'm sure we could get into that if we were ever on a, once Disney buys DC eventually. I have this one the exact same place as Ron. I would probably actively turn off Iron Man 2. Wow. I love Mickey Rourke, and this is such a brutally bad performance coming off an amazing performance that it's rough. It is, one of my least favorite Marvel films. It bounced between the bottom, but
my second to the bottom was Hulk. Was my number?
Yeah, mine
20.
too.
Me too. Yeah. But can we, before we move on, can we just talk about how I can't believe how good the scene was, though, when Howard Stark is basically Walt Disney talking about Epcot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I saw that and I was
hey, we bought Marvel.
And he does like the whole Epcot promo basically without calling it.
And they've got that song
Epcot.
that's basically Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow.
Which was that Sherman Brothers? Or not Sherman Brothers?
I believe
that did that?
Maybe? I don't remember.
I feel like maybe, yeah.
Listen, we have these giant boxes that we're on.
Like, the model of the expo is this huge plot point, like.
Yeah.
And you're like, it's Epcot.
Yeah. Now I want to break into Progress City model and the People Mover and see what's buried beneath it.
So Adam.
Please don't do that, and please don't ever say you got that idea from WDWNT. We don't need any more bad publicity.
No,
we do not endorse.
We do not endorse breaking into any part of Disney property.
Number 21, Avengers: Age of Ultron.
Oh,
okay. Well, this was my bottom, so
you paused too long for that. I was nervous.
I was like. So I have Thor: The Dark World here, but Age of Ultron.
It's another one where there's just too much going on. Ultron is a good villain in and of himself. It was more to introduce Vision than to have Ultron be the villain.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. And it sets up so much that maybe it should be higher just for its importance.
And I let it be higher for that reason.
But also, like,
that's
some
the
of
problem with a lot of these movies is it's like, well, but it's like so important, you can't just take it out. But
I think this was some studio interference one. This is why I think Whedon left the franchise. I would have loved to have seen Red Hulk. I think that would have really upped it a little bit. And the whole combo with Jarvis, like, I love the way things, like, it makes sense the way things are created, but it also like I wrote them into a corner where they can't bring certain things in from the books at a certain point now, which I guess is fine. They're doing really well, adapting their changes. And, I could almost say the party scene, though, almost saves this movie, because that's one of the best scenes in any Marvel film.
Even though I don't necessarily buy the retcon that Steve could always pick up Mjolnir, but whatever. And that he just chose not to.
That could go either way, but there's just the set pieces were fine, but they just weren't great. I think the Hulk battle, the stealing Vision, the end battle, like something just never lived up to, and then it's really hard to live up to the battle in New York. Like,
yeah.
And none of these did. None of these lived up to some of the other action scenes we got in like other movies that came between, like, and this was being a follow-up to Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
A really serious plot. This kind of just had way too much that was referencing, like, kind of reference Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is and isn't canon. It's just, things start to fall apart here. And this was where we start to, like, peek at studio interference, and then it goes away. And it really showed here.
And something with Age of Ultron, like, I was really interested to see, like, how Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver would be worked in, especially knowing, like, okay, they can't be X-Men because of everything. So I was like, how are they going to do that? You know, they're interesting characters. And then it was like, their inclusion, like, how they fit them in was just so weak. And then, you know, they killed Quicksilver.
I was going to say, yeah, like, why even bother bringing in the like, if you're just going to kill one of them in the same movie? It was just weird.
And then it was like I like Scarlet Witch in the later movies, but it was still kind of like, she doesn't ultimately do a lot. Like,
true.
So it's almost like, why did you introduce them at all? I think something that I was just thinking about with Age of Ultron and the final battle is they, like, more than, like, a lot of the other movies want you to take this really seriously in a, like, oh, there are civilians and, like, this is really dangerous. But I feel like other movies did it better without, like, made me care more about civilians because they actually, like, showed me civilians.
Right, and one of the things that always set Marvel apart from DC is Marvel was set in real places. So, like, if you live there, or you hear about this place, there's a consequence. Here they have to make up the country that they're going to destroy because I guess they didn't want to, you know, hurt their, like, 3 people who go to see a movie in one of the Yugoslavian republics, like, kind of thing. Like, they could have picked one of those now, but there's just a million little things. Like, Quicksilver was meant to show, oh, we're going to start killing characters. Well, you can't introduce a character and then kill him in this movie and show us you're serious about change in the universe.
Right.
And I understand why they did that, because X-Men was using him heavier, so they didn't want that, so they just got rid of him.
But then why even bother introduce him at all?
Yeah.
Like, you could have just had Scarlet Witch because you were already, again, because she couldn't be one of the X-Men. You were already kind of retconning her backstory anyway. So you didn't necessarily need him. The only thing you really needed him for is that one great scene with, oh God, I can't think of his name now, Hawkeye, where he points and he's like, nobody would know. That's the only thing that you needed him for.
It's a good moment.
Because that was a fantastic moment in that movie.
Yeah.
He was there to be a character plot point for her arc.
Yeah.
And that's
but he never mentions him again, though.
Yeah, like, he in this movie does the same thing with Scarlet Witch that they do with Vision later. Like, and then that makes, like, her whole thing with Vision, like obviously it's a different relationship because it's romantic versus sibling, but it makes her whole thing with Vision almost feel less important because it's like we already saw this other character she cared about die, and we didn't care that much about him.
And it was her brothers, like
her
twin
like the
brother,
only
and she
person
never mentions it again.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of fault of later movies more than this one, but like, yeah.
I mean, one of her character arcs in the comics is she is a character that is made to suffer over and over and over again. They like give her children, and then they find out her children never existed. They were some sort of like mythical dream.
I mean, that's what they're gonna do with her show.
I think it really is.
I think that's what I get the impression.
The comic book, which is a really interesting book. I did not get into it, but yeah, I think a lot of it is her kind of psychologically making up for all the stuff that she's gone through. I'm
really excited to watch the Scarlet Witch show.
She's like the most powerful person.
Yeah.
And just treated like an afterthought.
Like Professor X actually considers murdering her at one point because he fears how dangerous she can be in the comics. And I think we might be building, like, it's a good, we're not ready for Secret War or something really mythical yet, but we could still do like a House of M / Avengers Disassembled storyline using her from like, she's lost Vision, she's lost her brother, she can't keep handling this. And so maybe that's what we're building to. But they really have they should have referenced Quicksilver's death a little bit more in her character development, particularly like in her choices in Civil War.
Yeah.
I'll save my little bit of Ultron for when I have it on the list, but you all are all making fantastic points. By the way, it was the Sherman, Richard Sherman, who did that. Richard M. Sherman, not Richard Sherman, the defensive back for the 49ers. The Disney legend. And
just to keep my 20. We're at 20. This was everybody's 21. So
21,
what did everybody else have? I had Thor: Dark World.
Yeah, I had Thor: Dark World, 22, The Incredible Hulk, 23, Age of Ultron.
Okay.
All right. So let's go to number 20 and back to Iron Man.
All three of those movies I just kind of put in a box and push away, and I'm like,
Yeah, I think this is kind of Avengers Age of Ultron is kind of a line like I'll watch it because it's so important to the plotline, and there's a couple things I like, but like going from here on with Iron Man 3 being my number 20, I enjoy these movies generally.
Yeah.
And so going with Iron Man 3 at 20 is, as we said, it's Tony actually here has a reason to kind of revert to some sort of introverted, self-interested person. He's actually going through PTSD, which I think is, something interesting to see, because he is he is a human character as opposed to like even Cap is human, but he's been made something beyond. And even in his own head, he was always he's grounded. He still knows what he's capable of. But here, Tony really faced death, and now this is him reacting to it. And the villains and the whole storyline, I think, worked better than Whiplash, at least because at least you get a good fight. I mean, another fight scene with a million robots fighting each other, but I think it was a better set piece than the World's Fair thing at the end of 2. And I kind of love the whole Pepper thing at the end and all that. But I think it just worked a little better than Iron Man 2. But overall, it's might be the least important in the meta plot of any of these movies.
Yeah, I have this one at 19. I gave it a little bit of an edge over Iron Man 2, because I will say, as a person who lives with somebody with PTSD, they actually did a very good job of very subtly portraying what it's like. And my husband even made that comment, that he was actually really impressed with the portrayal, because it's so many subtle little things, like the overt, obviously, but even just little ticks and things like that. He did so well. I mean, it's still not a fantastic movie by any stretch compared to a lot of the others, but I mean, it's okay. And I do like his portrayal of him as the character Iron Man in it.
I have it a little bit higher, but I have it the lowest out of all the Iron Man movies. So I have it lower than Iron Man 2. I feel like I had a good, I mean, I guess, like I kind of said earlier, I feel like the Iron Man movies start to get repetitive. So like once it gets to Iron Man 3, I'm like, all right. And I don't really I do like the whole villain story better than Iron Man 2. I think it works better than like Whiplash. Although Hammer is like really enjoyable in Iron Man 2, but like, this is a better villain story. I don't really like the final battle. I don't like all the suits coming and fighting. I guess it feels less like of a personal fight. I mean, he ends up squaring off with what's his name, but I like it better when there's actual people fighting and not a bunch of suits. And then he explodes all the suits, and then that like doesn't matter to later movies.
Thank you.
It's so weird.
Yeah.
It's so weird because he's basically like, I'm not gonna be Iron Man anymore, and you're like, what? But you are. There's more movies.
I think
like,
the whole thing
There's no lessons.
Yeah, like if that had been literally the ending for Iron Man in these films, then fine. But it wasn't. And like you knew it wasn't watching it. So it's like, and also it was just like, oh, and now we can take the thing out of your chest. And we couldn't do that before, but now we can. Like, I mean, medical advancements, but they didn't say that. Like, is that? I don't know. I mean, I do have it higher just because I enjoy it more than a lot of these other movies. But
it definitely still has
and I
problems.
do think the like PTSD portrayal is really good. The kid is fun.
Yes, that bumped it up
I've
literally one
kid.
spot for me. Yeah.
I met that kid at a convention once. He was just like also at this convention as a guest, and I saw him. It was a Harry Potter convention, and he was dressed in Slytherin Quidditch robes. And I was like, guys, that's Harley from Iron Man 3. And everyone was like,
came back for
I haven't seen
Endgame,
it.
too.
And I was like, I know, for that one shot where he looks completely different because he's like an adult now. But that was great.
Yeah, and everybody had to Google who it was. I'll never forget all of us walking out of the theater at Stage 89, like whispering, like, who was the kid? Trying to figure out. And
like,
it took
that was Harley.
Yeah. I think it took a little bit to like click on who it actually was.
Yeah. Well, again, like he's not mentioned in other movies, so it was kind of weird to bring him back.
It was cute though. I liked it. It was a nice touch.
Yeah.
So with the suits flying around like that, I think was supposed to be the lead-in for the like Iron Guard or whatever he had in Age of Ultron, but like I don't think they filled in that little step. Like I don't think they could one line of dialogue wasn't there to fix that. And the other thing that this movie started to have the problem with in my mind was being after Avengers finally. It's like, why didn't he call Steve?
Yep.
Yeah.
Something I imagine we're going to talk about a lot.
Like,
especially as it goes on. Like that gets more and more odd that they don't.
And it's the phase 2. It's between Avengers and Age of Ultron where you have those questions in these couple of movies that take place here. Like, why aren't they helping each other out? Because after that, you start to you kind of see them falling apart. But like here, there's supposed to be this tight-knit group all of a sudden. And, you know, Steve doesn't call him during Winter Soldier. He doesn't call Steve, like, where's Banner? Like, all of these, like,
we have to make excuses that they're in other places.
Yeah.
You can do it with a line of dialogue would be fine, but sometimes they don't acknowledge it at all.
Mm-hmm. And and sometimes it makes sense, like, oh, I mean, like, obviously they're never calling Thor because he's in space. And it's like, okay, Cap, I see not calling people because he's stubborn, and like Winter Soldier is this whole espionage kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it is like with Tony, it's just like, why didn't you just like call?
I mean, you could always write that off as ego.
Not even
ego.
Like Natasha or somebody doesn't even call Natasha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody.
And also, especially with the after credits scene of this being him talking to Bruce, which is like funny, but it's like, well, where was
makes it even
Bruce
weirder
this whole time? Yeah.
But
and it's like
we can
Bruce
get into it later.
Even had to have been the Hulk in this. Like, he could have been helping with the science.
Science bros.
I do think that they do obviously learn their lesson, though, because in Far From Home, they specifically have Peter ask Nick Fury about everybody else, and he has an excuse for why nobody else can come help him.
It's just you.
Learn from that. Nope, you're it.
Yeah. And the other kind of elephant in the room here is the Mandarin being who he was, who he is here. And then them retconning it.
And then doing nothing with it.
With that short, yeah.
Yeah, the short was great, and I love the whole way it worked. But like, they knew there was some backlash here. I thought it was a clever thing to do in the movie.
Yeah.
But and if that short had the after credits tag, it would have been mind-blowingly awesome. But the fact that they had to do it after the fact shows that it was kind of, to me, shows it's a fan reaction, and they're trying to fix some people complaining. But if it had been the plan all along, it's great.
Well, right, because didn't they kind of already establish that the Ten Rings existed? Because wasn't it an offshoot of the Ten Rings that kidnapped him in the first movie?
It's a throw-off
Ten
line.
Rings are referenced in both the first and the second. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't understand why they... That was the part that made it feel the most weird for me. I thought it was creative how they did it in the movie. Because obviously, okay, fine, Hammer, there's this actual terrorist group, and he impersonates them to freak out Tony. Makes sense. But to your point, they should have had the Hail to the King as the cutscene at the end, instead of having to redo it. And they should have done something with it after the fact. They've done nothing with it.
So many drop threads, and especially when you talk about, like, with Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that it's in and then it's out. So, yeah, that's a big bother for the kind of whole gist of the MCU.
Can we talk about how great Ben Kingsley is, though?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Because he was fantastic.
Yeah. He's so funny. I just remember getting to that scene in the movie and being like, this is great.
And again, I mean, I never read the comics, so I don't have, like, I know a lot of comic book fans who were, like, truly and rightfully pissed because they were all excited for the Mandarin, and I didn't have any of that back history, so it didn't bother me as much as most people. What bothered me more is that if you were going to do that, you should have just dealt with the fan backlash and accepted it and moved on. But you went back and you filled this short and you put it out there, like, no, really, guys, we're going to go back and fix it. And then nothing happens.
No, maybe they come and we see them take on Rihanna with Ironheart.
Yeah.
So what did everybody else have at 20? Because I didn't have Iron Man 3 at 20.
I had Iron Man 2 at 20.
Okay, right.
I have Ultron at 20.
I have Doctor Strange at 20. Which, like, I don't know. It's another one that I've only watched once, and, like, it was fine. It's just one of the ones where I'm like, I just didn't really, like, care that much. Like, it had good moments. I I think looking at my list, I might even put it a little bit higher, but like, it's like I'm so neutral about it. I can't.
Yeah.
But we can talk more about that when it's on your guys' list.
All right. So at 19, I think this one might actually surprise a few people. I have Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Oh.
I don't have anything
surprising, but not really.
Yeah.
There's nothing negative to say, but there's nothing really super positive. Because it had to fit in a certain timeline in a certain place, but they needed to have more characters developed and brought in. Nothing about the movie didn't work. It was very enjoyable, but I don't know why it just didn't work super well. So it's just kind of in that blah point here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like the fact that it kind of set up the ability to go back in time without beating it over your head that that's what they were going to do to solve the endgame problem. They just established the premise and it fit within its own movie. Like they didn't shoehorn it into anything that wasn't already established in the first Ant-Man. So I did appreciate that. But yeah, I don't really have anything positive or negative to say about this one. It was a good movie. It wasn't overly special, but I mean, again, I'll watch it if it comes on.
I have it a bit higher because it is like an enjoyable movie. I have it higher than the first Ant-Man. I like it better than the first Ant-Man. I just think it's more fun. I don't know. It just like kept my attention more. I have at 19 Civil War.
Whoa!
A lot of
Wow.
You can't just say something like that, and there's consequences to actions.
Civil War is another movie that I just find to be like kind of messy, and it has too many characters. Like there are parts of it, there are storylines of it that are really good, but then there is stuff that like just really tires me out. Like I don't know. I don't know that many people who like Civil War. Most people I know do not like Civil War. So
thoroughly
I'm
enjoy
kind of surprised.
Civil War.
I mean, there's stuff that I like about it, but that's surprising to me. But like, I don't know. It's just like they're just being so stupid. It's just and it's also like I haven't read the Civil War comics, but I also know that like the Civil War story in the comics is so much better. But because of the way they did the movies, you couldn't do that story.
Well, and you can't blow up you can't have a superhero accidentally blow up a school. Like that's not going to work on film.
Not nowadays.
Well,
no.
Yeah, no. But then it's like I didn't like it being like such about Bucky. Like not that I don't like Bucky or like Bucky being a sign, but just I feel like Civil War being a Captain America movie didn't work quite right. Like it should have been an Avengers movie.
That's a
It's more Avengers 2.5 than Captain America 3.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And it's like liking like the other two Captain America movies being so good and liking those so much, I wish that we had gotten a better Captain America 3, like an actual Captain America 3. Like I wish that we had had a Captain America movie more about like finding Bucky and less about like, oh no, but I like Bucky. Like, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Anything else on like Ant-Man? Ant-Man Wasp?
No. What did everybody else have? Well, I know Shannon just said her 19. Patrick?
So the bottom four are movies that I wouldn't really rewatch. The next two are movies that I found pretty forgettable. So my 19's Iron Man 3 for all the reasons we kind of talked about. It's just forgettable. And the only thing that bumped it out of 20 is Tony's relationship with the kid and the fact that the kid comes back in Endgame.
Ditto. I had it at 19 as well.
So 18, I think everybody's already.
Yeah, they are, and they should be.
That's fine.
Oh, I'm not. Yeah. By the way, I'm not looking at the chat. So if anybody sees anything the chat wants to discuss, please let me know.
All right.
But at 18, I have something I think everybody's already talked about is Incredible Hulk. I don't hate the movie. I actually enjoy a good few parts of it. Roth's character, I really like. I like that they give him.
Yeah,
they give him a good. He's a good fight at the end. It's much better than, like, as I said, like Ang Lee's Hulk was beautiful, but the fact that, like, the villain was Nick Nolte showing up drunk on the set and ranting without actually having a script in front of him to try and be.
Wait, is that a thing that happened?
No,
yeah,
but it really looks like
okay.
He goes on some insane rant that seems like something Nick Nolte would have done.
Right.
All right,
and to your point, we both just believe that that's what happened.
Right. But there's a Hulk fight, and I really wanted that big drop down Hulk brawl, and we got it. I think Norton is a weird choice, as you said, for Banner, but he kind of wrote this, so it was kind of his vehicle. He's like Norton, like, and they Ruffalo a little bit too, but like Rick Moranis should be Banner in my mind. Like,
yeah.
Banner is supposed to be super, like, Ed Norton was still kind of in his Fight Club physique at this point. Like, he should not. Like, he's a little too. Like, one, he's a little too tall. He's a little too buff to be. He didn't come off nerdy enough, but I enjoyed the way he played him. Like, still, like, on the run and things like that. I enjoyed. I like the watch mechanic. I like all the things they did to make the Hulk an interesting storyline. It might not have been the best, but I think it's as good of a thing you can have as the Hulk, unless you really just want to have two giant behemoths pounding on each other for 2 hours.
Yeah, I mean, my problem with Edward Norton as the Hulk is not with Edward Norton. It is with, like, the casting of Edward Norton. Like, Edward Norton is a good actor and, like, does well, but I'm not like, that's Bruce Banner.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think, like I said before, I think what really hurt
Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah, that's what really, I think, again, people didn't like this movie when it came out, but again, having the part recast and seeing Mark Ruffalo in it, I think has hurt this movie even more since then. Because, I mean,
and I don't even necessarily think that Mark Ruffalo is the best Bruce Banner that they could cast.
I mean,
but
he plays the nerdy
better.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's better. He's not perfect, but he's better. And he fits better. Like, could you imagine, like, in the first Avengers and everything, like, Edward Norton in those scenes?
No.
No.
He would be trying to outact Downey Jr. on every step of the way. I don't think he was a good choice for, like, an ensemble picture.
Yeah.
It wouldn't have worked.
Something else with Mark Ruffalo is, like, I feel like they were kind of inconsistent with what to do with his Bruce Banner. So
yeah,
there's that too. Like, I really like him in the first Avengers, but then, like, I don't like him as much in the other ones necessarily. But those are other movies. Incredible Hulk's a bad movie.
We're at 18, right?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I have Ant-Man and the Wasp here.
I have Ant-Man here, which already kind of...
I have Doctor Strange at 18.
Yeah, Ant-Man and the Wasp is just, like, it's fine. I enjoy the characters. It's well acted. It's not bad. Somebody in the Facebook was saying that maybe we were experiencing a little bit of Infinity War fatigue after that, and it was just an awkward release date for that movie. Like Ron was saying, it had to fit in, and you had to mention the snap and this, that, and the other. So it's forgettable for me. I honestly don't remember it that well.
That's my thing with Ant-Man. Like, I don't remember Ant-Man that well.
So just to go on that, Ant-Man is my 17. So I think it worked Ant-Man worked great as a heist movie, and it was one of those things that Marvel does best is it takes superheroes and puts them in another genre, and that's when it shines best. Like, and Ant-Man just being like an Ocean's 11 style like heist, I think worked, and the characters were great, and like they had more development, like the ex-cons. I'm blanking on every actor's name all of a sudden. But everybody was good in it. Rudd.
Yeah. I mean, Paul Rudd's great.
And it was a smart choice. Like, if anybody knows the comics, Pym has the most problematic backstory of almost any Marvel character. And the fact that, like, well, if we make him the lead, we have to address it. If we make him a secondary character, but he's still in there, people like that he's in there, but we don't have to address the spousal abuse issues.
Talk about all the, yeah. You don't have to get into all the background.
Scott Lang, comic book wise, also not the best backstory as well. I mean, they kind of touch at it with the criminal, but there's a lot more to that.
Yeah.
I think Ant-Man and Doctor Strange both kind of fall into this thing where it's like they were kind of weird choices for them to decide to include. And I feel like they really wanted to include them but didn't know exactly how to do it right and didn't know how to make the best movies out of them.
They were both crucial to the quote-unquote end game that they had in mind. Yeah. So they had to introduce them somehow.
So it was like they had to introduce them somehow, but it didn't work like quite right. But then it was like, well, we have them. I think I was thinking about it. I think like my problem with the first Ant-Man movie over the second one is I was pretty miffed about Janet being like dead. And then like they fixed that with the second one, and that was really interesting. But I was like, but I want Janet.
Yeah.
I want the Wasp. And
but the secondary characters, like who were the ex-cons? Like
Michael Pena, you're probably thinking of.
Yeah. Yes, he was great.
He's very good.
Yeah.
So what did everybody else have at 17?
I have Doctor Strange.
I have Guardians of the Galaxy too.
Okay, I have Guardians of the Galaxy 2 much higher, but we'll get to that later. I have Infinity War at 17.
Wow.
I didn't realize how controversial I was going to be. Infinity War, I mean, we're in this section right now, I feel like, for all of us, where it's like, it's not that, like, I don't like it. It's just, like, it's not my top. Like, it's kind of like when ranking Pixar movies, there were so many movies, so it was like, this isn't bad, but like it's low because that's how ranking works. But I don't know. Infinity War, I think Infinity War is kind of a lot of my same feelings as Civil War. But Infinity War is better, in my opinion. It's also it might just be that it's such a downer to watch.
That's why it's lower on my list. I'll give you that. It's a super bummer.
Yeah.
But
it's such a culmination of everything. Like
it is, but I just feel like there could have been a better culmination of everything. I don't know. I just think by this point in the series they had so many characters and it was so hard to like focus on characters in one movie. Like it's just so hard for me to kind of like follow people because I'm like, it's like I like movies better when there's a main character, when there's one main character, and that doesn't really exist by the time you get this far into the Avengers movies.
Yeah.
Like, because even in the Avengers, it's like, all right, like Tony and Cap are the main characters.
Yeah, and it's Tony Cap and Thor is like really like kind of.
Yeah, and it's like that's kind of still true with Infinity War and Endgame, but it's like, but now there's so many other people that I have to care about, and I have Endgame at 16 because, and I do.
Why? Why do you hate everyone?
I guess I just don't like the ensemble movies. I think that's what we're learning because I have now done like
what
all
we're learning today.
Movies. Yeah, it's like there's just too many characters, and I'm like, I just want to care about one person at a time. I can't deal with all these people.
Whereas, see,
and Endgame has
like
half the amount of characters.
Yeah, see, I like seeing them all together and interacting after seeing the standalone movies. I personally kind of enjoy that. But I can understand how for some that's not the cup of tea because it bounces around too much between.
It's like I want to enjoy it. It's just that they get to having too many characters, and I feel like they don't know what to do with some of them in the ensemble movies.
That's a like, valid criticism, I think.
Yeah.
And like I like Captain Marvel. I like the Captain Marvel movie, but I feel like her inclusion in like Endgame like wasn't that big. Like she saved Tony at the beginning and then she destroyed that ship at the end, and it was kind of like, all right, but like we didn't need her. We could have found other ways around these moments, like without having another character.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Anything else on Ant-Man before we move on right now?
I don't think so.
No. All right. Well, number 16. We're now getting one of the originals. Is I have Thor.
I'm coming, baby. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Wow.
I have Thor. I have Thor at number 10. But I know that people don't like Thor, and I know it's not like the best movie. It's just one of my like comfort movies.
The second act just drags. I think hurts the most of it. Okay. It's a lot of character development. I get that, but it just drags. And this happened in 2 is I think Kat Dennings can be a good actress at times, but that character really just annoys me. Like
how
to no
dare
end.
You? She calls me on her meow.
I enjoy her more in the first one than I do in the second one. I started to find her a tiny bit annoying in the second one at times.
I mean, that's because the second one
she had no reason to be included in the second one. But here, she's the comic relief, but like Thor himself is kind of the comic relief. Like his interacting in the human world and then her sarcastic comments on top of that, it's like we're making a joke about our joke at times. But the story...
That's not Kat Dennings' fault. That's poor writing.
No, and I said I like Kat Dennings in a lot of things, so especially like when her early indie work was some really good stuff. But when I don't like her when she's over the top comedy, like Two Broke Girls kind of stuff. Like,
that's a terrible television show, and I have no idea how it ran for as long as it did. Like, it's bad.
I feel this kind of that same sarcastic humor she ran through that, but
it's too much.
Loki is the best villain, like, and they establish him great here. The Warriors 4 are fun. Heimdall's amazing. Like the way he's a small role, but I think he really still somehow draws people in, and that's just Idris Elba.
Yeah, I mean, he's. I have Thor just a little bit higher, but I mean, your complaints aren't unfounded. I think it's really good. I honestly, if you put a tour of Hemsworth and oh my god, I forgot Loki's name. Hiddleston. If you just gave me Hemsworth and Hiddleston like reading classic literature together, I'd pay several $100s for a ticket to see that.
Good.
Yeah. And it oddly still felt like a Kenneth Branagh film, being kind of like almost a pseudo Shakespearean epic.
And I love Kenneth Branagh.
It's just at this point we are like all the Marvel movies are kind of good, and we're in the nitpick. Like at this point, and we're kind of in a nitpicky thing to me, and I think that's why. That points where it just draws out a little too long.
I mean, again, it's fair. I had it at 15, so I only had it 2 spots higher than you did. One, yeah. And I think honestly it's just because I enjoy Loki so much that bumped it up a little bit for me.
He's definitely
he's
one of, if not the strongest villain.
I would say, I would argue strongest. I mean, even versus...
Yeah.
At least in Thor.
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say the whole MCU, because I don't even... I would say he's stronger even than Thanos, because they don't do the whole death storyline. You don't really understand.
How great would that have been, though?
Argument
that would have been so good.
For Thor, or for Thanos. He's not a terrible villain, but Loki's motivations make far more sense than Thanos'.
Yeah. Yeah, it is like you feel for Loki, like you know he's wrong, but it's also like, okay, I get it. Like,
get it because.
But you've been a kid brother before, or a younger sibling. You get it.
Yeah, and it's like, their dad sucks. Like,
how dare you say that about Sir Anthony Hopkins?
Sir Anthony Hopkins doesn't suck. Sir Anthony Hopkins is amazing. It's Odin who has problems.
I usually have problems with a lot of these comic book movies trying to make villains too sympathetic and stuff like that. But Loki works on that because you understand, like,
so well.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to like destroy the world because of something. He wants what he feels was his right. Like he was he felt these were his rights. He was lied to his entire life. Like you understand those kinds of things. But like other villains that I think, particularly I think the original Spider-Mans were the worst. For every villain suddenly has this deathbed redemption kind of thing. But you don't build up to that. Like Loki, you understood his motivations the whole way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think it helps that he doesn't start the movie as a villain. Like, he's not like the best person ever, but he just starts the movie as like he's with Thor's friends. Like he, you know.
I mean, he tricks Thor into doing something stupid.
Yeah.
But, like, that was his character. Like, that's what kid brothers do, or brothers do to each other.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you should go do this. This is a great idea. And then step back and watch.
I'm the first person to say, like, I'm sick of, like, villain redemption arcs because I do think they're getting tired and people don't know how to do them well. Like, so many villain redemption arcs these days are just like, okay, they didn't actually do anything to redeem themselves. But
yes,
and I mean, Loki doesn't even really have a redemption arc. Loki just has a arc where we understand what he's going through.
Yeah,
like, you know, he's becomes like part of, you know, the team in Thor Ragnarok, but it's still like he sucks. Like, it's just that like you feel for him and you just understand his motivations more, and he just kind of wants.
He's empathetic,
you know,
not sympathetic.
Yeah. And the whole thing in Dark World where they pretended to kill him was stupid.
Yeah. Yes.
But at least it's set up for fun at the beginning of Ragnarok. We're at 16.
Okay. Yep. Cool. 16 is.
So I
Ant-Man
have Thor at 10. Okay, well.
Wait till you. Yeah, hold up and wait. You got to make them work for it.
Patrick, what's your?
Give it all away. Ant-Man. I love Ant-Man. It's great, but it's a comedic relief movie. And everybody's fantastic in it. It's just, it doesn't bring the same gravitas that some of these other ones. And I couldn't, with good conscience, rank it ahead of any of the other, like, original Avengers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I just realized my list had a mistake.
Yeah, I mean, I have Ant-Man lower.
I had Ant-Man on the last, but 6. So, but yeah.
Number 15, I think a couple people already mentioned this, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2.
Yeah, I had it at 17.
This amazing moment. The opening fight scene is one of the best things in any Marvel film.
So great.
The characters are still great. Ego just didn't work at all.
Yeah.
And it's not the fault of any of the actors. It's just like they wanted to do something cosmic and they didn't want to get too far because they're saving some of the cosmic stuff for what's going on with Thanos. But like, if it was definitely a filler film, it was definitely a filler film, trying to go into a backstory that kind of didn't need to be done. I think it was a good mystery.
Yeah.
Ego's always been a weird character, and I kind of like that they attempted to do him. And Russell was awesome, but just some like. And another thing would be you have too many people going after them: the Ravagers, the Gold people. I forget their names, and Ego. Like it's suffers from every sequel-itis problem in one film, but still somehow ends up being something I really enjoy watching at the same time.
I'm Mary Poppins,
because the characters are so fantastic. Like the escape on the ship was just great moments, but just not that tie together well.
No, like it dragged on until you got to those moments. Like I was bored in parts of it watching it. That was my biggest problem. Like again, the opening scene is fantastic. It makes you excited for the movie. But there's just so many moments where it just drags on, which is weird to say for a Guardians movie because the first one's fantastic and they're great characters. But yeah, it did. I don't know why.
So I have 15 Iron Man 3, which I mean we've already talked to death about. I really like Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I have it at number 5.
I have Guardians a little bit higher. I like it a lot too, but I see the
I can see and maybe like I need to watch it again. I haven't watched it in a while. I don't know. I just find it, I mean, again, like I think this comes up a lot with me. Like I just find it really enjoyable subjectively.
yeah.
It just has so many good scenes. I can see how it kind of like drags a bit. But I don't know. I really like it.
Oh, she brought the whistle.
Aw.
Sorry, we have a special guest.
With both Guardians movies, I really like them. I really like movies that like utilize music in really cool ways. And I think that's something like Guardians 2 even does more interesting than the first Guardians. So that's something that I really like.
Hi.
She can't see any of you guys. She's too far down. Oh, she also learned how to blow a whistle. So I'll talk a little bit more about Guardians when I get to it. I think I have it just a little bit higher. I have Spider-Man Far From Home here. And it might just be that I haven't seen it as much. But I enjoy the film. I enjoy the whole Night Monkey thing. But it doesn't hit as well as the other ones do for me, especially because a lot of it is just how much he misses Tony Stark. And then, like we talked about a bunch of times, Tony Stark never learns his lessons. And so he then gave Spider-Man, a teenage boy, a weapon that's almost as powerful as Ultron. So, you know, I love it. And I think down it goes. I think Tom Holland does a great job as Spider-Man, but it's just a little bit lower for me. Yeah.
I have Far From Home just a little bit higher. I have it at 13. I definitely like the first Spider-Man better. I mean, that's much higher.
Yeah, I've got it just a little higher, so I'll wait till we get to it in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Anything else on Guardians 2 or really? I think most people already had it, or you had it at 5, but everybody else had it higher.
We'll get
all right. Another one I think is.
Hi.
Anthony, did you have something?
Oh, no. I blinked for a second. So I was just trying to get back in.
All right. So number 14, I really love this movie, but I think we're getting to the point where, to me, it is just what I feel like at the moment for these next few. But Captain America: The First Avenger.
Really?
Great movie, great origin. I don't know why I just did one of those things where I did the what would I rather watch at the moment for doing these middle films, and this is just where it ended up. And I love a lot of elements about this movie. I mean, I love most of the elements about this movie. This is just where it ended up on the list, I guess. Mainly because I like other things, or I think other things had more influence going forward.
I really love this movie so much. It's way higher on my list. It's probably one of my, I won't spoil it, but it's one of my favorite ones. It was such a great movie. It introduced a character to me that I didn't know a whole lot about. He remained one of my favorite characters. And again, I think it was just such a great story, and they did it so well, establishing everything. Like, it sets up everything that you need to know about Steve Rogers for the entire Infinity Saga in that first movie. And I love it to pieces.
I mean, I have it in my top 10. I have it much higher, but I will say that my big criticism of it is I feel like the pacing is kind of weird, and it's because they're trying to cover like so much time in one movie. And I've always felt like they want you to care about the Howling Commandos, but it's like there's not enough time to get to know them in the movie. And so then it's like when they come up in like Agent Carter, it was like, okay, but I never actually like cared about them in the movie because they were in it for like 5 minutes. And yeah, so it's almost a movie that's entirely a montage because they have to do so much stuff. Which
and I think that might be one of the reasons I have it lower.
Movie, but
that's fair.
That's kind of a problem with it.
Yeah,
and some of it with the montage elements, it kind of feels a little more cartoony in some of it than a few of the other things.
I don't think
because of that. I don't mean like that. I don't mean that's a necessarily bad thing, but
it did have elements that to me felt like comic book panels, but not in like a gimmicky, cartoonish way. I don't know. And
if you've ever read a lot of Cap comics, he's a really hard character to make interesting, and it was still probably not too long before these movies started coming out where I think they really got a good grip on him again, because like writing Superman, he's just too Boy Scouty sometimes, and you have to give him something that he's not just literally the good guy all the time. And I think they did a really great job establishing he is the good guy, but he's the good guy you don't want to piss off. Kind of thing.
Well, and I think the way that they set him up, though, in this movie, it makes the interactions between him and Tony in all of the other movies, especially Civil War, be that much more interesting and make that much more sense. Because, I mean, and something that they do, to your point, Ron, to make him more interesting, he's always the good guy, but he even admits, like, sometimes he doesn't want to do it, but he knows it's the right thing to do. And so he does it anyway. And I think that makes him more interesting rather than saying, I'm just always right and I'm just always going to do the right thing. And, it's because I think that it's always the right thing to do. Like, he's very open sometimes about being like, I don't necessarily agree with it, but it's still the best option and it's still the right thing to do, even if it's not the easiest thing to do. And I do appreciate that. They did a great job with him. And a character, to your point, Ron, could have really blown up in their face and been very annoying. Throughout the rest of the saga. If
First Avenger had not been like what it was, if they had not done such a good job with Cap, then it's like the rest of the franchise could have fallen apart.
Forget it.
I mean, that's why it's called the First Avenger. And it's like Cap, of all the characters, I feel like they did a really good job of kind of like keeping him grounded and realistic throughout all the movies. And I never felt like he's regressing, like kind of how we talked about with Tony, like doing some of the same storylines over and over again. Like I feel like Cap is a consistent person.
He's patriotic and moral without being like jingoistic and preachy.
Yeah.
And I think that's those are hard lines to really do, and they do it here. I think in Avengers he becomes off more of that parody of himself at times. There's a couple lines that just don't work, or that just seem out of, like, yes, they make sense for this, guy who came out of the 40s, but like it's still a really weird line to have in a modern movie.
Sometimes, yeah.
So I think there's nothing wrong with this movie. I just don't know. I think there's maybe the montage or something just had it here, or Red Skull is so over the top and cartoony, or things like that. It's just kind of how it ended up here on my list.
We're on 14, right?
Yeah, it was 14.
I had the first Guardians at 14.
Wow.
No, sorry.
Wow.
Ant-Man.
Okay.
Ant-Man was at 13 or 14. Sorry.
I have Ant-Man and the Wasp at 14, so I mean, we've covered that.
I'm at Thor. I think I said the reasons kind of why I put Thor a little bit higher. This little section here was really tough to determine who was in and out of the top 10. So this was hard decision territory.
Say like
but yeah.
11 to 16 for me is like a lot of these.
I rearranged
moved
it
around
several times.
Yeah. So we want to go to 13.
Yeah, I said I used that like list generator thing because I couldn't like some of these middle gaps.
That's what I did.
Yeah, that's what I did.
Yep.
I sat there looking like, do I want to edit this? And I just said no, and I left it at there. Like, I'm probably thinking about it. My next one is Doctor Strange. Yeah, I'd probably rather watch Captain America than Doctor Strange most of the time. But that's just the way it ended up here. So number 13 on my list is Doctor Strange. I think it sets up a whole new world. The
Shining,
stuff
shimmering, splendid.
it wasn't the best, but it's just such a world building. Like, you're in a world we know, but you're building this whole other world around it. I think it could have definitely been better, and I think it could have been much, much worse. And I think the cast, again, with Cumbersnatch Benedict, or whatever his name is. I know his name. It's just always fun.
It's Blueberry Croissant Witch.
Yeah. But he's phenomenal. He's a Brit who doesn't do a bad American accent. Some of them just they had so much twang or so New York, which they could have done with him being from New York. I think really is a solid piece of it. I think what they did with the Ancient One was cool. I know that angered a lot of people, but I really think she did a great job.
I think the problem with the Ancient One is just like, no matter what you did, it would have been problematic.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason I'm kind of like, why did you even do Doctor Strange? I mean, I know why, but like,
I think they kind of had to, but
yeah, it's
like if you cast like
territory.
If you cast a Mr. Miyagi character, you're playing to a stereotype.
Yeah.
If you cast a white person, it's like, well, it's an appropriated character that could have gone to. It's like it's a lose-lose. So let's get a good.
There was a no-win situation.
The problem is in the original comics and like the racism there.
And they're trying to have to figure out how to fix it.
It's a thing that was also a problem with them including the Mandarin. Like, there are going to be problems there no matter what. I mean, it's, the Mandarin is a character called the Mandarin. Like, so yeah, it's like no matter what you do, it's going to be like iffy territory with Doctor Strange in general. But yeah, I definitely I had Doctor Strange much lower. I have it at 20, but I enjoyed it. Once I finally watched it, I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. But then it was kind of just a forgettable movie for me.
And one of the things I like about him is he's essentially the same character as Tony to begin with.
Yeah.
The arrogant genius with the goatee and all of that. But his arc.
I mean, it's why they both played Sherlock, you know?
Yeah. Where Tony learns to take what he's done and save himself with that. You take somebody who has to go completely outside, and it's a good parallel and a fun parallel to see, especially in Infinity War. The scenes between them were some of the best in that movie. I just like this movie. It's the folding dimension stuff. I don't know, we didn't see that much again.
Really great on the big screen, and it really hinders its rewatchability.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I had it lower. I understand why he had to be in the MCU, again, to the point, but and I don't have a problem with any of the characters. I just didn't enjoy, it's fine, but it's not one. If I'm looking at the whole saga and I'm going to pick one to watch, that's not the one.
Yeah. And
it's a fine movie. It is, but
similar to Tony, it does just make it, once I watch it, I'm like, all right, I could just watch, if I want to watch a character like this, I'd rather watch Iron Man. And it's just he's not as interesting to me as Tony is. But I do like the character of Doctor Strange in the other movies that aren't his movie, after he's already progressed to be a more interesting character. But I just find him kind of boring in his movie.
Unless there's too many people in that movie, and then you're out.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm interested about the next Doctor Strange movie, which is, they said is going to be a horror movie, and Scarlet Witch is going to be in it. And so
I got a little worried when they fired the director, but Sam Raimi seems perfect for that now.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm very interested to see what that movie is going to be like, and hopefully it's good. I mean, I always hope movies are good, but yeah. Right. I mean, what are we at? We're at 13.
13.
Unlucky. So I had Far From Home at 13, which is a movie that I enjoy, but
I had the first Guardians at 13.
Wow. I'm surprised. I thought that connected with more people to see it that low on a couple of lists. I'm going to take some heat at 13. Yeah. I'm going to take some heat at 13, and it's the thing that kind of set it all off. It's Iron Man for me. And I'm looking over my list. Yeah. Well, I'm looking over my list, and I'm like, this section was really tough to rank. It's a great movie. Downey Jr. was the perfect choice. There's so many of these that I would find myself rewatching before I reach for Iron Man again. The villain isn't great. It's a great performance, but there's not a lot of connectivity. We were saying how you might not be as familiar with the comics. Looking at the comics, that's not who I think of Iron Man doing battle with. That's my first of the real big surprises for me is Iron Man there.
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
All right.
Wow.
So next on my list, I just got mentioned again, is Spider-Man: Far From Home.
Okay.
Really fun movie. Straight takes the characters in good directions. But being the most recent thing and a follow, it was an epilogue. It wasn't. It was an epilogue. It was Iron Man's story more than Peter's in a certain way.
That's why I had it looked too.
Really in it. And a lot of the things they built to and where they left off are, Marvel and Sony are playing ball again, but that could change at any moment, especially since this is Spider-Man 4 or 3 is low on the priority list. We might not get that payoff. And until we get that payoff of a lot of the stuff that happens here, it's a fun movie to watch. I'll put it on any time, but I can't put it higher knowing they might just drop every plot point they need. They built.
See, I don't know. I think putting it because of hypotheticals, because I mean, at any point in time, like any of this could have fallen apart. So, for contract reasons or anything like that, like anything could have happened. We're kind of fortunate that they were able to carry it all the way through so many movies. I mean, 22 movies, really, because through the whole Infinity Saga. But I had this one a little bit higher. I won't spoil and say what number exactly just yet, but I enjoyed it. I think it was a good epilogue. I think it did a lot of interesting things with Peter's character, especially. And again, it to me is in these movies, it's all about like the details, like having the things over the light switches saying don't turn off the lights, and all him and MJ, like it was all just very well done. Like he still feels like a high schooler. And I think this was one thing that the previous Spider-Man movies suffered from, is they tried to age him up too quickly. Like they didn't, 1 second he's a teenager in high school, he gets his powers, and then bam, he's basically like a semi-responsible adult. Like he's still learning, and I really appreciate that. Like, and I get your point, Patrick, about like, Iron Man gives him this like super weapon with no actual guidance. Although it does feel kind of natural in the whole thing, because he was trying to mentor Peter, and like he wanted Peter to be better. And I think especially after seeing, how Peter matured and everything, with going to space, and, coming back with the line of saying, when he chides him for going to space, like, well, you can't protect the friendly neighborhood if there's no neighborhood. I think, seeing that growth in him, and understanding that he's not just a kid that wants to play, like he actually wants to do good and be a good superhero. Like I really liked it. I enjoyed this one a lot. And Spider-Man was by no means one of my favorite characters until he got cast. And in these movies, I think he's really great.
I mean, I have Far From Home at 13, but I have Homecoming much higher. Like, I really love him as Spider-Man. And, like, in Far From Home, like, I like all the characters. Jake Gyllenhaal is so much fun.
Really good in that role. Really, really good.
It was good.
Yeah.
But I do agree that it kind of relies too much on, like, Iron Man and being, like, an epilogue to Iron Man's story.
And one of the things I was saying is, like, this was a lot of discussion before this, is like, everybody's like, oh, I love this Jake Gyllenhaal character from the, I was like, who Mysterio is, right? Like, people were like, there were people I know who read the comics like, no, I think they're actually going to go in this direction. I'm like, are you crazy? Like, he's the villain, right? Like the whole time.
I know, I saw so many people being like, he's like Peter's new dad. And I was like, he's going to be the bad guy, right? Like,
no. Yeah. Like, and again, even as somebody, that surprises me, because even as somebody that didn't read the comics, like it was very easy
I
to
didn't
put
read the
that
comics
together. That this is
it was
not
just like watching
happen.
the trailers. I was like, he's going to be the bad guy.
But I did like, and this is something else that I just, they did great.
The turn in the story was fantastic.
Yeah, and I genuinely do appreciate, and I liked how they kind of tied it back, but they didn't make it such a big plot point about how he had been fired and he was technically the inventor behind Barf, and that Tony had just used it. And then, I thought that was interesting that there was that connection. But again, one of the other reasons I think why it's so high for me is I like that it showed growth for Peter when he didn't have a mentor anymore. Like he had to figure all of this out on his own. I mean, like Nick came and, no, Nick didn't even come and help him. That was Mysterio. And he had to call Happy and figure it all out completely on his own. And the throwback when he's building his new machine is one of the, like, that was the moment where, like, it tugged at my heartstrings to see him on the plane and AC/DC comes on and Happy just looks at him. Like, I kind of a little bit lost it at that point because he wasn't there anymore. So anyway, I'll stop for a minute.
Yeah, I think my only complaint is the Peter's a kid jokes just kept getting old at a certain point. Like, hey, did you hear about this? Like, do you know about this thing? Like, I get it.
Yeah,
That's what teenagers do.
some
fair.
of him being like, I don't know what that is like, no, he would know. Like,
Like, like I remember I had those moments with my parents, but like the Empire Strikes Back thing was really funny, but then like just repeating the joke multiple times just over the course of the movies just felt like a trope at that point.
I choose to believe that it's Peter just messing with the adults in his life, being like, oh,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah. And that's actually one of the things
like a nerdy kid has seen Star Wars. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
come
And
on.
wouldn't be like, you guys heard of this really old movie?
Yeah, he had a Lego Death Star, which is not a cheap Lego thing to begin with. Like,
I
He
think
knew.
like,
He was just messing with them.
yeah,
Totally
I think of
messing
my
with them.
roommate. She loves to tell this story of when she was on a panel about Twin Peaks at a convention, and like she is younger than me by a year. Like she's 24. Like she did not watch Twin Peaks when it was on, but someone on the panel brought up VHS tapes, and she was like, "What's a VHS tape?" And everyone in the room like lost their minds, and then she was like, "I'm just messing with you." And they were all like so mad, and that's how I like to imagine Peter is with all these things.
I actually, it kind of that he's messing with the adults brought up something that I like that these movies have done more than the other ones. Like Peter was smart in all the other ones, but like other than like Tony Reed, like and Reed Richards, like Peter's one of the smartest people in the MCU, and they downplayed it in the comics for years, and they downplayed it in the other movies, but now they're kind of showing like, no, this kid is like a super genius.
Yeah. For sure.
So
This is number 12, right?
12. Yeah.
I had Iron Man
What'd you
2,
guys have?
which we've already talked about.
Yeah, where are we at? Sorry.
12.
Lost my place for a second. So are we saying what we had at 12 right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I had Age of Ultron at 12.
It's so high.
I don't know why. Like, I see all the faults. I do.
That's fine. Yeah.
I mean, but I don't know. Like, again, I think kind of to count that, Shannon, like, I like seeing them all together.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine.
And it does have, like, its good, like, Josh Whedon comedic moments. So.
Yeah, it does. It definitely, I mean, that Hawkeye and Quicksilver moment you brought up was really good. And I really like Hawkeye. I like Hawkeye as a character. Yeah.
And I liked that in this one, like, he got to be Hawkeye, whereas, like, in the first one, he kind of did, but not really, because he was Loki's kind of, like, little person for most of the movie. So I did like seeing more of him. Yeah.
Yeah, I like seeing more of him. I still wish we could have seen more of him in all the movies. I mean, I guess there's going to be a Hawkeye TV show at some point, but anyway.
Well, maybe not.
12 for me is, I honestly thought it was going to be higher, is Captain Marvel. I love Captain Marvel. I want to rewatch it. It hits me in the nostalgia just right. And I feel like the whole thing with Goose and having Goose's relationship with Fury, it's just it's good comedy. There's good action. It didn't feel like too high a stakes for a standalone movie. I really enjoyed it a lot. It's one of my favorites. But
I mean,
there's apparently 11 others.
So,
yeah.
This seems to happen. Somebody always goes into my next one, and my number 11 is Captain Marvel. Just a solid film all the way through. Really goes from the cosmic stuff that Guardians did to more of that space civilization that Marvel needs with the Kree, the Skrull, all that. And I'm glad they did it here. I think they did it well. Because in the comics for years, neither of them were the good alien race. That was kind of the Shi'ar, which are an X-Men property, which you can't use. So what they did with the Skrull, I love the story there. I love that, the Kree were the turnaround race and all that, and well acted all the way. I love the nostalgia aspects. I think I got some crap on this on Twitter and I'm very specific about this. It's the 90s rock is one of my things. So the fact that I didn't care that, yes, some of these songs were not out in 96, like that were played in the credits. I had a problem when she's in her own psyche facing off against the Supreme Intelligence, and they're playing Nirvana's Come As You Are, which is a song she should not know, and they used it as a plot point. That's a writing error to me, not using a whole song that came out 2 years after the movie was set in the credits. That's not a problem, but it's something that's a plot point that you use that's kind of anachronistic is my biggest flaw with that movie is that thing, and that means it's a really good movie in my opinion.
Yeah, it's, I mean, I have it higher, but we've said we're kind of at the point where it's like these are all good movies. I mean, I really like it. And I love that it's not too big of a story. I like that it was refreshing to get a standalone movie at this point that doesn't completely connect to the main plot.
That's fair.
Because it's not that I don't like the standalones connecting to the main plot, but I like to be able to watch them without being like, oh yeah, what does that mean? What Infinity Stone is in this movie? Yeah. I have at number 11 Black Panther, which I mean also a very good movie. My kind of one thing with Black Panther
I do too.
Okay, well, my kind of one thing, a villain, first of all, great. Killmonger's great. He's another sympathetic, empathetic villain. Very different from Loki, but you understand where he's coming from. You're you're doing it wrong, but my one thing with Black Panther is T'Challa doesn't really get character development in his own movie because they kind of already did his character development in Civil War.
Yeah, so that was that was what kept it out of the top 10 for me too. Which, side note, listening to you all talk about Captain Marvel has convinced me that I should probably go back and watch it. You should. But anyway, that was just an aside. But Black Panther, that was the one thing. I felt like he felt like a secondary character in his own standalone movie. And to your point, I think that's because they did a lot of character development in Civil War, which was great. Don't get me wrong. It was great in Civil War.
Probably my favorite part of Civil War. I love his story in Civil War.
But that was the one thing that I did not like about his standalone movie, is that he didn't seem to actually do. It was like Killmonger's movie, and he was there. Which
Killmonger was a super interesting character, so it was
he was great.
But
but it was just.
All right. If anybody has anything else on their number 11s or Captain Marvel, I think we're going to take a break.
My 11's Guardians Volume 2.
All right.
I mean, we talked about it. I mean, I have it higher, but.
Yeah.
All right. If Jason, if you're listening, go ahead and can we just run an ad break here?
Yeah, I need to go get some water.
Yep.
I'll stay. You guys can take a break. I'll stay on for a second till and talk about
till Jason appears.
Till Jason actually. Jason's working. A lot of us are doing the day jobs while we're doing this at times.
Yes,
so.
So I apologize if you see me looking not at the camera. I'm actually trying to do that whilst we're doing the list, but it seems to be working fine. Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Dreamfinders is WDW News Today's podcast all about the creative culture surrounding Disney parks. Authors, Imagineers, dancers, actors, photographers, filmmakers, and a whole lot more have all stopped by to chat about how Disney has inspired their artistic work.
But I still remember sitting in conference tables and looking across at Michael and Jeffrey Katzenberg and this sort of little 6-year-old inside of me going, what in heaven's name is going on here?
And we're off and running, and Tony needs someone to lay it out for him. And there's no architect available. So the next thing I know, I'm laying out the pavilion.
I got to tell you, I have not enjoyed a podcast so much. It's just a warm conversation, and warm and intelligent conversation, which you don't find that often in podcasts.
Dreamfinders. Episodes drop every other Tuesday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcatcher.
Four panelists, 30 minutes, 1 week in Disney Parks news. This is Parks Center. On Parks Center, the panel and I cover the top 7 Disney Park stories of the past week. From attraction news to transportation scandals to new food and merchandise, we'll cover it all in 30 minutes or less. You can watch us stream live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. at WDWNtunes.com, watch episodes on demand at youtube.com/WDWNT, or subscribe to the audio version of the show on your favorite podcast app.
Pressing Issues is the spin-off of the WDW News Today podcast segment as a long-form panel discussion in which some of the brightest minds of WDWNT analyze the biggest stories of the week and their impact on the Walt Disney Company, its parks, guests, and cast members. Join us every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern, live on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, or afterward on the WDW News Today podcast feed.
On every episode of the Ride Rehab podcast, we put ourselves into the shoes of Imagineers. Here's a preview of our most adventurous episode in Adventureland.
And then there was also the zipper.
Everyone
knows about the zipper.
Everyone knows about the zipper.
The zipper's like this. It was built in the 50s. And it's made out of like clockwork gears.
Even my Planet Coaster guests won't go in the zipper.
Yeah.
Well, wait, that's it.
We put a zipper in there?
Absolutely.
A zipper ride.
That's the real adventure, is a broken neck. Part 2 of this episode will come out on the 21st, so we'll see you then.
Let's jump into this studio stuff.
Very, very bizarre job I had, trying to explain to my wife sometimes when I came home what I was doing at work.
And only had 6 months to prepare.
That's like the same as now.
Be sure to tune in every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for WDWNT's premiere show, WDW News Tonight. We've got news, games, discussions, and more, including some great unexpected moments like this.
What wildly popular snack was originally created at Disneyland's Casa de Fritos in the early 1960s?
It's gotta be the pickle. I'm going with the pickle.
The pickle, you're going with the pickle.
It's just a pickle.
You go.
It's a classic part. The pickle started it.
Tom has physically gotten up. Can you repeat the question, please?
The snack that was created in the Frito's house. It's in the commercial.
The pickle was created at Disneyland? Like there were no pickles before Disneyland.
Mom's favorite. That's what everyone grew up eating pickles,
Oh no, she's talking about the snack. Not the pickle that grows on the ground, but like
before that, it was just a side dish with barbecue food. And then it became a snack.
Carly, do you agree or disagree with the pickle?
I definitely agree.
Yes!
Yes, girl.
It was Casa de la Fritos.
Pico.
I'm glad they didn't ask me. I was gonna say the handwich.
You can catch all this and more on WDW News Tonight. Watch live every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern.
WDW News Tonight is our weekly comedy show combining the news of the week, comedy segments, thoughtful discussions, insane characters, parody commercials, games, and more. Watch live on Thursdays at 9 p.m. and become a Wigs member to get access to a bonus post show. Watch WDW News Tonight episodes anytime and live on YouTube, or get the audio-only version on iTunes and other podcast services.
If you like what we're doing here on WDWNT Live, then you can become a Wigs member for as low as $2 a month. Or you can donate via the Super Chat.
Hey, there I am. And round 2.
Yeah. Oh, that was fun. This just makes me miss the park so much. And everybody.
I hate that I had to miss the last couple events.
We missed
children.
I didn't exist for the last couple events.
I mean, you existed.
Well,
Wait, were you part of the
I
snap?
existed. No, I'm just that young.
She's part of the X-Men universe. Disney hadn't bought her yet at the time.
Brought her over.
Yeah. We weren't allowed to say mutant before now, but here I am.
All right.
Top 10.
So we are back. Let's dive into my top 10 here with Captain America Civil War.
Well, obviously I
understand what you're
disagree,
saying.
but
I didn't love it. I've moved this up my rankings the more I've watched it. I think part of it is the big denouement is kind of the second act. That third act feels weaker after the airport fight, but it's the story. And yeah, I've one of my old jobs, I used to actually advise people who were writing scripts to sell and stuff like that. I worked for an executive producer, and one of the things I always say is, like, you can't always have your big action scene in the end of your second act. It leaves people wanting a lot in the third. But the emotional, watching it again, that emotional impact at the end of the third act, where they're it really does make up for that. Zemo wasn't the best villain. We're going to see more of him coming up, so maybe they'll work on that. But like, the fight between Iron Man and Cap was great. I still don't know how, even as strong as he is, Cap can punch armor.
Because
it's fine. It's fine.
I understand him hitting him with the shield, and they could have stuck with that, but like, he's literally punching Tony in the face some of the times. Just didn't make any sense.
Well,
he was mad.
No,
it makes lots of sense.
It does, because I mean, you think about it, they do kind of set that up, because is it that movie or one of the other movies before that? I mean, he's bare boxing with a punching bag and puts it through a cement wall. Like,
oh yeah, no. This is definitely Ultimate Universe Cap, like, who could, could always go fight the Hulk. Like, he might not win, but he
can. My big question with like Tony's armor is, how does he not have padding in there? Like, he should be much more severely injured.
Like, an airbag or something. Like,
yeah.
What a fantastic idea.
No, and I like to be like, there just is. We just don't see it. But you see inside those suits. You see pieces of it. There's no padding. It's just straight metal. But all right.
Yeah. So that aside, some of the I think the weaker elements is they're building up for another fight against these super soldier spies that never materializes, and I felt that was a tease. So that whole fight to the third act kind of brings it down, but there's great character. You introduce Spider-Man, Black Panther, and they don't take up not a huge amount of the screen time for the movie, but you get their development, and they didn't have to give us Peter's origins again. They know everybody in the world knows Peter's origins at this point.
God for that.
Yeah.
Because when they do
so
Robert
wise.
Pattinson and his origin story on Batman for the 8th time, I might cry.
You're going to cry anyway because Edward Cullen is Batman.
I don't care. He's a good actor.
Yeah, he's not that bad.
He's not actually a vampire.
I know. It's just going to be weird because to your point, he's a decent actor, but that's what everybody knows him as. It's like Edward Cullen is now Batman. That is the world that we live in right now.
Or
forget the pandemic. That's the big issue Ashley has right now.
Yes.
Anyway, back to this. It might be the best action set piece in any of the movies up until the Endgame fight was the airport scene. It was great, and even being it's a Captain America film and he does drive the plot, but it's a great ensemble film. The fight.
See, I think it would have been better if they had just let it be an ensemble film.
Yeah, and I think they really. If they had called it Avengers, I think that would have a lot of people's problems with this movie might have been put to the side. But
maybe, but at the same token, the Avengers is when they're supposed to be working together and whatnot. So I think you would have had just as many people argue that it's not an Avengers movie because it's them falling apart. And it's really the driving force is just, everybody takes a side, but it's Cap and Tony. They're the catalyst for each side. So I think I see what everybody's saying, but I feel like there would have been just as many. I would have to believe they struggled with what to call it.
Either if it had just been Civil War, the movie, that almost
maybe
would have
Marvel
better.
Civil War.
Yeah. And they did some smart things they didn't have any of the god level characters in here like Hulk or Thor. They hadn't introduced Captain Marvel yet. So writing out those characters who could really skew your plot in a different way by and actually mentioning them work. And I think that just mentioning them fixed some of those plots they had in the because this is really the end of phase 2 more than Avengers was.
Yeah.
But those phase 2 movies between the Avengers all were the ones that had the plot of where are your friends to help you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had this very high on my list. It's one of my favorites. I think it was well done. I like the setup. Since seeing the movie, I've looked a little bit into the original Civil War, from the comic story. That was a great story. I understand why they couldn't do it that way, so I think they did the best that they could. Zemo is, he's a very weak villain, but at the same token, I think he was just the catalyst. Again, because it was something that they were kind of building towards the entire time. If it hadn't been him, something else would have popped off to make Tony and Cap fight. Because they, even in all the other movies, when they have interactions, they have very different worldviews of what their purpose is as the Avengers. So I think they would have fought eventually. And to me, the airport scene is wonderful, to Ron's point, one of the best pieces ever. But I would argue that the third act, where it's Tony and Cap and Bucky fighting, is just as well choreographed and intense. And
I like that better than the airport fight.
Yeah, it's just such a gut-wrenching scene to see two guys who were at the very beginning. Yeah, and at the beginning they had built to this point where they were such, best friends at the, obviously Steve was closer to Bucky for past like growing up history, but they were like best friends, and to just see them completely fall apart and not be able to have any common ground. And I won't lie, even when Cap utters the line, I could do this all day, I really for a split moment thought that they were going to stick with the story and kill Cap. I knew they would bring him back somehow, but I really thought that Tony was going to accidentally kill him. And that
I was first going into Civil War.
Said that, yeah, like I kind of wondered, and then when he stood up and said, I can do this all day, like I really thought at that moment, like, oh God, Tony's going to accidentally kill him. And that's where we're going to kind of leave things for a while. And
I was convinced Cap was going to die in this movie when I went into it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And for that, it was probably one of the first ones where I felt like there was actual stakes it cost for them. Like, you knew they were going to win at the end of the Avengers and stuff like that, but you didn't know what was going to happen at the end of this one, like where everybody was going to end up.
And there's a couple things like you were like saying you went and read the original comics. There's a lot of things I think did better than the original comics. Yeah. I think the catalyst for why it happens wasn't as good, but why they take the sides they did makes more sense to me.
Makes more sense.
Particularly
much
Peter.
More.
Like Peter siding with the reveal your identity group in the original one made zero
sense.
Because he's one of the people who arguably every time somebody figures out his secret identity, his people become in danger. Like, how many times did Gwen or MJ or Aunt May?
Gwen was just that one time.
Well, yeah, that was a good time. Like that, that made no sense to me. When I went back and read the original comic, like, wait, what? He did what? Why?
Yeah, you couldn't do the inciting incident in this day and age of
not
the
even
original
halfway.
Civil War. No,
I don't think not even.
No,
nothing involving.
No, no, you can't do that. It's just. I'm with Ashley on this. I have this much higher. It's a great movie. That fight with Cap and Bucky, someone in the chat said it was one of their favorites in any of the MCU. I have to agree. It's so personal. I mean, you've been in a situation you've been mad before, and you're hurting yourself more than you're hurting the other person or the thing that makes you mad, and you just keep going. So yeah, 10 seems like an okay spot for it. Shannon's ranking was completely unacceptable. And
well, what do you guys have at 10?
My 10 is the Avengers. I liked it a lot. It's something that's always rewatchable to me. The fight scene in the Battle of New York is just incredible. I love the 360 swirl around, really great artistic points. You get a lot of good Loki stuff in there. I thought it would be higher, but every time I thought about ranking him, it wound up right about here. And I think for kind of what started the whole franchisiness of it all, I think 10 is a good spot for it.
That's fair. I had Ragnarok at 10.
I have Thor 1 at 10. A movie I like.
Yeah.
I think just something I like about Thor is that it's like small town. It's more simple. Like, I like not having a city in danger. Like, it's a little bit different of a setting from all the other movies.
That's fair.
And I'm a Kenneth Branagh fan forever.
The one thing I think, just to finish up with Civil War for me, is you guys were saying, like, if there had been some consequence, more of like if Rhodey had died completely, this would have moved up. But the fact that they kind of were still shying away from that at this point kind of made me fear what they were going to do with Infinity War. And they did. They steered into that, and maybe some people said they might have oversteered. But what they did was, I guess they learned from it, and that did add some consequence. So moving on to number 9, Iron Man. I think it's a good film. I think it deserves the credit for starting this universe, but I don't think it's by far the best. I think they were learning their pacing for these. I think they were learning maybe we have to go a little more cartoony or comic booky at certain points. And Ironmonger still just bothers me. I just didn't like him as a villain. And that's what we said is all the Iron Man villains have been weak, and Obadiah was like well played, well motivated, or I mean, cartoony villain, well motivated, but everything
Obadiah,
about it worked.
I think, could have been a really interesting villain for like if he had been in all 3 Iron Man movies and had been like the final Iron Man villain as like this guy who, because it's like you get that like Tony's known him his whole life, but it's like you don't get that relationship a lot before it's like Obadiah's the bad guy. So I don't know. I mean, I have Iron Man ranked higher, but I agree that it's not like the best, but it does have like a lot of a nostalgia for starting this, and like it, I mean, it, you know, I mean, it started this whole thing. It changed the film game forever, basically.
Yeah.
And another problem with that fight is like they're establishing who Tony is and they're establishing his power. Then they have to like put an artificial cap or power him down for him to have a villain at the end. Like he's back on that original Mark I heart that can't power his suit. Is the only reason this is this is a fight for him. And I think maybe letting Obadiah go like full on War Machine, like, oh, you built your suit, well, I built the exact same thing and added all these weapons, was better than like just powering Tony down.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Something I like about all 3 Iron Man movies is that Pepper gets to do something in the final battle that helps.
Yeah. That is, she's not just like kidnapped in there for stakes. She actually does do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On Iron Man introduced Coulson, and we love Coulson. I love him.
Yes.
Coulson lives.
I love Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
character, but everybody loves him.
I know, but he's so good.
Yeah.
It's Clark Gregg, like, thanks to him.
Yeah.
What did I have at number 9? I had Spider-Man Homecoming at number 9. I love Spider-Man Homecoming. I mean, you know, we're in top 10 here. It's hard to rank stuff. But, yeah, I mean.
Yeah, we're getting to another cluster. I could put a lot of these interchangeably.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, Spider-Man Homecoming also, like, we've already talked about Far From Home. Like, you know, it's a lot of the same stuff that I like about both of them. I like that Spider-Man actually feels like a teenager. I always cite the scene where he's trying to lift the like beam off of him, and it's like, oh my, like just in that moment I really feel like, oh my God, this is a child. Like, what have we done? Someone help him.
Yeah, you're getting number 9s?
I'm at Black Panther for number 9. Really another film, like it's hard to, you're really nitpicking between these. And what I realized in doing this is literally 19 of these movies I would probably sit and watch on a day, even if it's a nice sunny day like today, I would watch because they're just enjoyable films. Black Panther's Chadwick Boseman does a great job. Michael B. Jordan, honestly, I don't think these movies get enough praise in like our award ceremonies. I know it's for these prestigious roles, but come on, Lord of the Rings won an Academy Award. Like Michael B. Jordan's performance in this is tremendous. Wakanda feels like such an amazing, fully formed place. The politics, the royalty of everything is done, and I agree with everybody saying we don't get a whole lot of development from Black Panther, but we do see this fully formed world come into view, and I think it's a great place, and you learn so many dynamics. It's really good. It's like almost Lion King-esque, you know. It's really a fantastic film.
Well, and especially considering like with Wakanda, you know, we mentioned most places in Marvel are real places. And so to have this like made up place that's like super different from the rest of the world, very like fantastical, and it's like, but they establish it well so that it's like realistic and you understand how it works and you like understand everything about it without them really having to like beat you over the head with it. So it's a good movie.
All right.
What did you have at 9, Ashley? Yeah. Did you say?
I had, where'd it go? Yeah, I had Spider-Man Far From Home.
Okay.
All right. Number 8, Marvel's The Avengers. It really did show that these ensemble films can work, that you could tie these universes together and have everything do, and that you could take real comic book tropes and put them on a screen and people will like them. Because you had the movies that came before Iron Man 1, 2, Thor, and First Avenger, like, didn't feel super comic booky most of the time. I mean, I said, like, Cap did a little bit, but, like, this felt like you could see panels in the movie almost, and how they're going between them. And you didn't have to establish, you like, can jump into a story with villains, with a villain you don't really have to build anything up, and the movie just kicks in and just keeps going, and it worked great, and it built everything after it. The only reason I think I have the other stuff higher is they built on what they came up with here and took a lot of those things that one step forward and kind of pulled back on the few things I think they thought didn't work.
Yeah, I mean, I have Avengers higher, but like...
I do.
I mean, it's a good film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I understand the arguments.
Yeah.
Actually, I have Endgame at number 8.
Wow.
Okay. I have first Captain America at number 8, which, I mean, we've already talked about. Like, I think the first Captain America, like, is one of the ones that has, like, the most... oh, I can just put this movie on at any time for me. Mm-hmm. Like the pacing kind of bothers me, but that almost makes it easier to just have on in the background, like no matter what I'm doing. So yeah, I mean, I love these top 10 movies. Like,
yeah. I mean, it got incredibly hard.
I mean, even like I don't have Endgame, anywhere near the top 10, but I still love Endgame. Like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been talking about other movies, and I keep remembering moments from Endgame, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that was good.
Yeah, Avengers took all those tropes and, like, they have to fight once they meet up before they could become the team, and they did everything you expected out of a comic book and rolled with it and just proved it work. But
well, and it's like just all the actors are so good, and they all just balance each other out so well. Like,
yeah.
And I actually have Endgame as my number 7 because I think there's a lot of really, really great things, but I hate the best of the MCU second act. I did not like
I can see that.
travel elements. It felt like wrote all this and then we need to pad this out a little bit. People are expecting this epic long movie. And the last 40 minutes of it are basically a giant fight scene, so let's put a little bit of our character closure in the middle, and jamming it all together, almost everything at the same time, felt forced. Great first act, great third act, just slow in the middle, and I think it was a smart move to, yes, you had a few of the side characters, but you really brought it back to the core original,
I do give it props for that. My biggest complaint about it is you have Hulk come back in the beginning, Banner come back, and he says Thanos is coming, and he explains about the stones and whatnot, and they go from knowing nothing about these stones really to all of a sudden, oh yeah, we have a plan to like try to protect all of them that we still know about. Like, that felt very weird to me. that they just all of it, like, yeah, that they didn't know anything about these things, and then they all of a sudden kind of put 2 and 2 together so quickly, and we're going off on this plan. Yeah, that was my biggest complaint with it, is that I feel like they could have built that a little more. They probably wouldn't have had to pad it out so much if they would have had a little bit more like, okay, well, we have to find them and figure out what to do. Because it kind of really is like Banner shows up, they go off, Tony and Peter wind up in space, and I don't know, it just felt off the way that they chose to do it together, or the way that they chose to do it, because they don't even ever actually really talk to each other. Banner he passes the message on to Strange, and Tony just happens to get dragged in, Peter just happens to get dragged in, and yet they all seem to know what's going on, even though they should. I don't know. It felt weird.
I think I have my last 2 Avenger movies backwards. I thought Endgame comes first, and then Infinity War.
Oh, you're right. You're absolutely right. I'm completely
wait, no, I don't know. I think you're right. You're right.
Endgame
am I?
Endgame's the last one. Yeah.
Yeah,
Infinity
I was
War
wrong.
the
I'm
one.
sorry.
Yeah.
I got completely confused.
I was confused.
They're confused.
All those gripes that I just said were about Infinity War. Endgame is great. Sorry, totally did not mean to confuse the panel.
All good.
Well,
I thought I had them backwards in my mind.
Connected. They're so connected
Right.
that it's hard sometimes to remember.
I couldn't imagine
remember which is
which.
Yeah.
They're so long. It'd be like 6 hours or something. My 8 is the original Guardians, and then I have Infinity War for almost the exact same reasons Ashley was saying. Like, that's just like, wait, do I have them backwards? So that's my 7 as well. People can hear that.
Yeah. Something else just like that I thought of that this kind of applies to Infinity War and Endgame, like a problem I have just with the character of Banner is like they spend so much of Infinity War being like, he can't Hulk out, and it's a whole thing, and then in Endgame it's just like he fixed it. And I get that there's like a time jump, but it's kind of like, that was like built up so much in Infinity War. It was weird.
Add in Thor Ragnarok to that, where one of the plot points is if he hulks out one more time, he might be stuck as a Hulk forever, which I guess they kind of addressed. But yeah.
It's like they just didn't know what to do there. Yeah.
Well,
I have
one of the things
number
I really
7.
love I love about Endgame is they bring everybody back except for the few characters who they can't, but they don't just bring it back like nothing happened. Like in the books, nothing happened. Like it was like a couple of days, everybody's back to where they were. Like there was more fallout from this movie than they did from the comic saga. That's everybody's like pantheon of books. This was more damaging to who we knew.
Yeah.
And I like that, like, they, even from who they had left, they then, like, broke it down to even more of a core group. Mostly the original people. And I like time travel stuff. I'm just really interested by time travel, but I agree that, like, kind of rehashing some of the old stuff was a bit boring. I mean, obviously, I have Endgame much lower than everyone else.
Also, the payoff of on your left scene when the portals start to open, they earned that with 20-something movies. And they earned that audience reaction to, but like after Cap picking up Mjolnir and that, like, they...
It wasn't great, like...
Stuff,
yeah. But it was the right, I don't know, like it elicited the right reaction, and I don't think that they could have done it better when they were bringing everybody back. Like that was just perfect in my opinion. because you
The
know he
final
snaps.
battle
You're
just
not
had
100%
so many
sure.
cheer-worthy moments. It was good.
Yeah, like you weren't 100% sure that it worked, and then you hear, you know, because you don't see them, they don't like just magically like all appear. So you're like, did it work? Did it not work? Because he kind of like freaked out, like, you know, because it burns his hand and everything. So the argument could be made it didn't work, and then you hear that, and it's such a great moment.
That's fan service done right. It
Yeah.
was entirely fan
definitely.
service, but it wasn't.
The whole final battle
part
was
of the
fan
plot.
service, and I do not care.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and even like that, like you just see they're bringing everybody back, and you just see Thanos' face go from the most arrogant thing to the "I am so screwed."
Yeah,
Like,
like there's
actually
genuine
feel-
concern.
Oh man!
All right.
That's my. So we did your 8 and 7. I said mine, and Endgame is my 6. So we just talked about that at length.
My 7 is Guardians of the Galaxy.
My 7 is Infinity War.
I've got at number 6, Spider-Man: Homecoming. The best Spider-Man movie, again, across 3 different universes of these things. He's perfect. Like, he's just perfect for the casting. He's old enough to be a good actor, but young enough looking to stay in high school for a while, which is kind of where they, with Garfield and Maguire, like, it was pushing it to make him be a high school student, so they age him up to college in the first movie, really.
Quickly,
basically, of both.
yeah.
And Peter was in high school for how long in the books before? Excuse me, before they aged him up? Like, it's
30 years,
critical to
something
that
like
character
that.
for him to be a kid. And I like that he has, you know, he still looks up to Tony, because he might have been an earlier character in the book, and, you know, he didn't have Tony to look up to because he pre-existed Iron Man. But if you look in the early books, he wants to be part of the Fantastic Four. He still has that, and they did a great job of working that in. And you've got a dangerous villain who can affect the world, but it's still a neighborhood issue for him. A realistic high school story, not like anything over the top. Everything about this movie just worked almost perfectly.
I really love seeing Tony Stark not being the main character. Like, he's obviously very important to it, and it's like that's one of the core relationships of the movie, but like he's not one of the main characters. It's like every other movie he appears in, he is the main character, or it's like him and Cap are basically the main characters. So it's fun to watch him be like second tier, but it works and it like makes sense. And yeah, Tom Holland's great. He's just a perfect Spider-Man. And yeah, I love that, like, he feels like a high schooler. He's still going to be in high school for, obviously, the next movie he was still in high school. The third one, if it happens. I mean, I don't know for sure, but
that's
like,
so scary.
It feels like he'll still be in high school in a third one. Like, yeah, it's nice to see. And it was nice to, like, you know, introduce just to the whole world a younger character who's the main character.
Yeah. And Keaton, I don't think anybody mentioned Keaton. Keaton just blew it away in this one, too.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So great.
Amazing.
Oh, yeah. So good.
But he didn't feel so big. You know, it didn't feel like he had his sights set on taking over the world. He's like, I'm mad about this. I'm going to take care of this.
Yeah.
But it does become it's now thinking about it, it is a trope in these Spider-Man movies that his villains are his villains because Tony screwed up.
Yeah, I know. I didn't realize that.
Well, my number 6 is Captain Marvel, so which we've talked about. Let me show my shirt now that I've reached it.
Nice. My number 6 is Spider-Man: Homecoming too, for all the reasons. Just a movie. It was a great secondary. I do again, I love the interactions between him and Tony. And it showed some maturity on Tony's side too. You know, now he's taking on this kid and there's real stakes, and, you know, the whole "I want you to be better" speech. It was just great all around.
It's
the part where you think he's not in the suit, and then he steps out of the suit.
Yeah, and then he steps out of the suit.
Like, ah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a great movie from top to bottom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
so good.
Now I want to go watch that. I actually had set on rewatching Captain Marvel because I haven't seen it since the theaters. But I think I might rewatch Homecoming. I said my 6 before. It was Endgame. We were talking about it a bunch. I love Homecoming. We'll get to it shortly. Ron, we're going to go up to number 5?
Yeah. Number 5, Black Panther.
Okay.
It's a good movie. It's something, I think it's different. It's gone from these epic stories we've had from a while to something that has consequences for the world, but is still personal. And kind of, even though we've seen a character, we get more of his origin after the fact in an organic kind of way rather than being like shoved down our throats in the first 10 minutes of a film. The art design in this is something unique and different in every aspect. It felt both a part and a part of the MCU, and it just worked. And a nice epic battle at the end where you give a lot of the secondary characters good stuff to do, even though it is supposed to just be that personal fight between the two cousins. And yeah, can't say really much bad about it.
Yeah. My number 5 is Guardians of the Galaxy 2.
Wow, that's really high for 2.
I don't know. Like,
I'm not saying it's bad.
Yeah, like, I don't know. I really like it. I like it better than the first one. I just find it more compelling, I guess. I guess, like, something with the first Guardians is I feel like they become a team, like, so quickly. And it's kind of like, it feels a little bit unrealistic to me. So in this second one, I just feel like they have more room to breathe because it's like they're already a team and you don't have to cover that. And I feel like they actually have established relationships now. And yeah, I just enjoy it. I enjoy the music. It's really good.
Yeah. My number 5 was the first Avengers.
For me, which I'm surprised Ron hasn't gotten to it yet. I imagine we're coming up here. And number 5 for me is, honestly, it's probably my favorite, but the ones that come above it are, I think, better movies. Is Thor Ragnarok.
You're coming right to it.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
So we'll I'll kick it over to you, Ron, to lead that discussion if it's right now.
Oh yeah, it is number 4, and this movie has no business being as good as it is. It is ridiculous in every aspect. I mean, it turns Thor on his head, and for a good, like, he's not the Thor we've developed over these last movies. He's actually kind of the Thor we were first introduced to, but as an adult and not like a kind of a teenager feel.
Yeah.
Like, he works so much better as almost a sidekick in his own movie to all these other characters. Like, the movie is so beautifully, like, 80s centric. Like, if Freddie Mercury had been alive, Queen would have done the soundtrack to this. Like, it was like Highlander.
I could put that in my head. Like,
their own version of Princes of the Universe. Oh, be great.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. The art design was reminiscent of Guardians, but unique on its own.
Yeah.
Jeff Goldbluming for half the movie. You cast him, just lean into it. Don't try and get him to do anything other than let him do. And if you watch like the deleted scenes, he had to be riffing on this. Like, there's no way he wasn't.
They said like 80% of the movie is improv.
Yeah. Loki learning his lesson to a certain extent.
I just love them being like brothers again and still at odds.
That was great.
But it's like they're still brothers. Like I always say about Thor Ragnarok that it's like Thor and Dark World are both like rough, and then Thor Ragnarok they finally figured out how to make a Thor movie, and it's perfect.
And a lot of it was Hemsworth saying, "Look, the paraphrase conversation I always heard he went to like Feige and says like, I'm supposed to be the god of thunder, not the god of exposition. I want to have the fun these other characters have. Stop making me the guy who explains everything." So on the opposite, he's on a world he doesn't know, even though he's a god in a cosmic universe. You have just even the, like, I forget the whole Hela plot because as it is, it's a secondary thing, but it's still great. She's a good villain. They should have used her as Death. They should have tied her into Thanos.
Yes,
brilliant!
It was such a missed opportunity. I mean, it was good as it was, but such a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
The Hulk is better than he's ever been.
He's more like comics Hulk, and it's just like it. You know, this is a friendship that has not been explored before, Thor and Hulk, and it's like now we're gonna give it this whole movie, and it works so well, and just all the actors in this movie are so good, and having so much fun. It's one of those movies you watch, and it's like no matter what, you know that they were having fun making it, so I'm having fun watching it.
And we want
like it
more
could
of
have been a
every
worse movie, and it still would be fun. But it's
and everybody expected it to be a worse movie. That's what was so great about it, is that it was such a surprise, fantastic movie.
Yeah, so good.
We want more Valkyrie. We want more. Who was the guy who took over? I forget his name. He was basically ends up being the henchman. Urban's character. I forget his name.
Scourge? Is it Scourge?
Scourge.
Yes.
Maybe. Yeah.
Even the characters that were kind of annoying, like the other gladiators, you still love, and that
it was just so many different types of characters. In some of the other like ensemble movies, I feel like with you got like Tony and Doctor Strange feeling kind of like the same character, but it's like Thor Ragnarok, you get into like all of these really random characters, but nobody feels too much like the other. Like they're all very distinct and three-dimensional.
Yeah.
It's great. My number 4 is the first Iron Man, which, is also a great movie.
My number 4 is the Captain America Winter Soldier.
That's my number 3, so we'll be there soon.
No, we still got to come up, but Patrick?
Yeah. 4 for me is Captain America: The First Avenger. I love this movie. I like war movies. I enjoy war movies, and I know it's not historical. I understand that. But it feels very historical to me, in not only exploring like how Captain America came to be and like the world that produced Captain America, the actual environment that produced Captain America. And I'm sure if somebody takes this out of context, I feel like we get a Captain America who would act how we want Captain America to right now. And Chris Evans is pitch perfect.
Yep.
Well, it's like something great about just Captain America in all of these movies is that they didn't make him, like, they let him rebel against stuff. Because he's like, this isn't right. So it's like, he's like, I'm not going to do that. And that's the way he should be.
That's exactly,
those are the best Cap stories.
And kind of like I said before, like they didn't just make him the goody two shoes. Like he did the right thing, like what he felt was the right thing. It may not have always been the easy thing or the popular thing, or even the actual right thing to do.
Yeah.
But they set up in this movie like what his moral compass is. and he doesn't waver from that even in the other movies, but they do it so well that it's believable to his character, becoming annoying or just a trope that, oh, Cap's, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you got at number 3, Ron?
Well, we're in the comedy section of the rankings because I've got Guardians.
Okay.
Another one that took everybody by surprise. Like,
yes.
Who are these characters? These were D-list characters that are now probably some of everybody's favorites. And the fact that like the voice acting like made some of these things, like just the like Vin Diesel's intonation made Groot believable. And and even though it was based off these 5 team, you still have great secondary characters like the Ravager and the Collector, and Thanos was a throwaway thing again, but like, and Ronan's a weird villain. But
it's a really weird villain.
Yeah.
He seemed menacing, and you kind of like, and he kind of lived up to it. At least, like some of the times they build these villains up and they don't. But really, this is, I think, like
the least important part of that movie, honestly.
Right. This movie got compared to the Star Wars: A New Hope a lot, and I think it deserves it
that.
Because a lot of people went into this thinking, whatever, and then it blew people away. Like, it's another comic book movie. This is going to be more of the same. Oh, it's a sci-fi movie that's going to be more of the same. And they really, neither of them were at the time. I mean, Star Wars has become the trope, but it wasn't at the time. You either were beyond cheesy or you were Star Trek. Like, there was no in between. And this took like, hey, you know what? We've done some serious comic book movies. We've done some superhero films, but like, we're going to take some pseudo superheroes and make a another buddy cop movie where none of them are the lead in any real sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I remember watching the trailer for Guardians and being like, okay, this movie is going to be something. And then it's like watching the movie and being like, whoa, this is like a real movie. This is good.
Yeah, I mean, it was surprisingly good.
I have it a little lower, but like, it's great.
I mean, I do too.
I mean, like I said,
it's still a great movie.
Like I said, my kind of complaint about it is I feel like they become a team kind of too quickly. Like the pacing for the first sort of half of the movie is a little weird, but
see, I don't feel that they become a team. I think they feel like they just have a common goal for the first half.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like even within my complaint, calling them a team is not quite right. But like, I guess like they joined together for me a little bit too quickly. But like that's just how the movie had to go.
And just this and Thor maybe are not as good of a movie as where they have them on the rankings, but they're just so much fun that they have to move above better produced movies.
Yeah.
I mean, that's honestly why I have even though it's not quite as high, Thor as high as it is, or Ragnarok as high as it is, because it is just a fun movie to watch.
I mean, that's even why I have the original Thor as high as I have it at number 10. Like, it's not as fun as Ragnarok or either Guardians movie for me, but like, it's more fun than a lot of these other movies.
Especially the next 2 I have on my list are not very fun movies at all.
Yeah. So what do you have at number 2?
Number 2 is Infinity War.
Yeah, we did.
Did we go around and
say number 3?
Yeah. I mean, I have Winter Soldier at 3. I know that we're going to get to that.
Yeah, I have Civil War at 3.
I have Homecoming at 3.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
So at number 2, I have Infinity War, and I think this is more of a bookend to what I think Avengers was than Endgame, because this, like Avengers, just drops you into it. It doesn't stop. And it feels like a comic book story from beginning to end, unapologetically. But it's the darker side of that. And I like movies that end because that end kind of on that weird down note because you don't expect that as much. I mean, I think people expected it out of this, but still not the norm. All the characters separate actually worked more in their favor because I think the pairings and the groupings that they did worked really well. Thor coming off of Ragnarok worked well with the Guardians, and Tony facing off against Strange with Peter just kind of playing in the middle, and
Batista perfect in there.
Yeah.
And Cap just going, nope, I'm Cap, I'm in charge here. It's just bringing him back to what he was, and realizing that as deep, like, Civil War may have spread them apart, but these people are still heroes, and when things need to be done, they will put those personal differences apart and jump back in as if nothing had happened. I mean, and I think that would have been more difficult if you had Tony and Cap together at that point, and just because of their views. But I think the way they divided everything worked great. You have good for the Wakanda fight. I love the fight in Scotland just because I know exactly where all that was from. I spent a lot of time in that little plaza on my honeymoon. The space stuff was great. The only thing I could say is they should have just ended with the snap and let the other stuff be the beginning of Endgame. But they took it completely different with that 5-year gap. So once Endgame came out, I kind of reneged on that complaint, but I really just like the way this movie's paced. I like the action scenes, and I like it's not character development because these characters are very well developed, but it's a character interaction.
It's a great movie. I think I knocked the final two Avengers a little lower because of the length, and like, man, do you really want to end on this bummer? Or even the happy ending of Endgame is still like tear-inducing.
Yeah.
So you know, I don't want to cry that much over comic book characters on a given basis. I'd rather roll with Ragnarok.
Yeah. I do appreciate about Infinity War, like, even putting Infinity War as low as I did, I do appreciate that they just throw you into it at the beginning. It's like, we're not going to stop and, like, do an exposition. Like, let's just go. We have a lot to cover.
We got to get moving.
Yeah. Like, I don't love that, but it's like, okay, I appreciate that they knew they had to do that.
Right.
It's just a very long action sequence.
Yeah, and I didn't have it quite as high, and I already said quite a bit, but it's fair. I mean, it's a great movie. Like I said, especially once you get down to the top 10, it's hard to pick ones over the other, in my opinion. Like, they're all, even the bad ones aren't terrible movies. Like, they're still watchable for the most part, with the exception of maybe one or two. So, I mean, it's good. I liked it. I like other movies better. It's not for everything. The snap, I mean, you know, people talk about it all the time, but, you know, Peter and Tony at the end is just, it's awful.
Yeah.
Yes. And just all of them, seeing all of them. And I mean, you kind of knew that they were going to be back, but you weren't 100% sure. So it did make it like, feel very real. Yeah. So I liked it. I liked that they tried to attach real stakes to it. Even though obviously most of them come back, but I thought it was great.
Yeah. I work, I do photography, and I can't tell you how many times, like, following Infinity War, we would take pictures of each other at work and then, like, fade out half of us and be like, Mr. Stark, and make people mad.
My favorite thing might be that references me and my comic book friends have been making for years suddenly became mainstream, like the snap.
The snap, yeah. So I have the first Avengers at number 2.
I have the first Iron Man at number 2.
I mean, yeah.
I got
the first Avengers. Just for a long time, like I was like, this is my favorite movie. Like, it's just a movie I could watch at any moment and love. I mean, we've basically already talked about it, but yeah. And I think we're about to talk about Winter Soldier.
Yeah. Winter Soldier to me is one of my favorites, just because it's not just a good superhero movie or comic book movie. It's a legitimately good movie. Yeah. And I think in the genre bending way, the only other thing that I ever say really works in this kind of thing beyond it is The Dark Knight, because you take a type of story and you just throw these characters into it. Captain America, Winter Soldier could just as easily have been a James Bond story or a Jason Bourne, like any kind of spy thriller, and you elevate it by making the stakes a little bit higher by putting the superpower people into it. And everything about this, I just absolutely love who they are. I love the way Bucky's brought back. I think it worked better than the books because it was a more concise way of doing it. I mean, there used to be a thing that, like, the only people that stay dead in comics are Bucky and Gwen Stacy. And about the time the MCU started, both of those things changed. Bucky worked.
The only person who stays dead is Uncle Ben.
Uncle Ben, and they bring Uncle Ben back eventually. But the way they brought Bucky back actually worked fantastically, created a new character with depth and a past that they're really trying to live down and make up for. And even though, like, he's Bucky, but he's not in this. Like, you don't feel like, oh, Cap's fighting his best, like, has to take down his best friend. That sucks. You feel that, but it's like, well, he's not his friend anymore in a certain way. Yeah. And this might be Black Widow's finest hour in the movies is in here. More to her than everything behind. I think more development in this than we're probably going to see out of her own movie. And it's a shame that we lose her because I think she was a good character, and I think they could have done more with her in that we finally get a movie with her. It has to be a midquel just to have things work. Falcon was a great addition. The running scene is just another, like, where Cap can do comedy where it's not just fish out of water.
Yeah, it's the whole movie has a very good balance of, like, it is overall a serious movie, but there are still comedic moments. And yeah, they just utilize so many good I mean, bringing Maria Hill in and, like, you know, having Nick Fury, but he's not in it, like, too much. Just, like, utilizing all these kind of minor characters that have already been in it. You know, bringing Sharon Carter in worked. It's a good movie. I have it at number 3, but I always say, like, objectively, it is the best Marvel movie. Because it's just, like you said, it's good as a movie, even separate from being a Marvel movie. And, like, as a fan of, like, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., like, this is when Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. got good. Because I remember watching Winter Soldier. Winter Soldier was also, like, such a good experience for me watching it because it was, like, I was in college and, like, none of my friends, like, cared as much about seeing it as I did. But they were like, oh, yeah, I'll see it with you. But then, like, it kept not working out until, like, one day I was like, I'm skipping class and I'm going to see this movie. And I went to the movie theater by myself in the middle of the day, and it was a huge empty movie theater. And I was like, this is awesome. And then I was like, what's going to happen on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? The show got good. That's what happened. My number 1 is Thor Ragnarok. Because I can watch Thor Ragnarok at literally any moment. No, we did too.
I just watched it. Oh.
We did too. Yeah, what was your number 2, Patrick?
My number 2 was this.
Oh, okay.
Was Winter Soldier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was my number 3.
Yeah, I had it at number 4. Like, again, it's a great movie. It's a great standalone movie. I mean, I think we've gushed about it, but my number 1 was actually the first Captain America. Because, like I said, I don't know why. I just really, really love that movie. And I think Iron Man is great. It was my number 2. But I think if you collectively look at all of the origin story movies, again, they did the best at setting up Steve Rogers' character. I think even better than Tony, quite frankly, in my opinion. And it's a fun movie to watch.
Evans is just so perfect for the role. It's
Mm-hmm.
And he did a good job, like in the Fantastic Four with Johnny Storm, like being younger and cocky and stuff like that. But he's so different here, even though he should be the cockier character, and he is cocky, but
in a very different way, though.
Yeah.
It's not so much cockiness as much as it is like he's very self-assured and confident. Like, you're not going to tell him that you're not going to convince him that he's wrong. But he's not arrogant.
Self-aware.
There's an earned arrogance.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like that scene in First Avenger. I was just going to say the scene in First Avenger where he pulls the pin out to knock the pole over and get the flag, and then he just gets into the car. It's like a moment where he could have played it so arrogantly, but he's just so straightforward about it, and it's just like, yeah, what? It's so good. Good character, good actor. Good movie.
Peggy Carter is a badass.
Yes, she is.
In this movie too.
Yeah.
What's your number 1?
I always compare that scene to the scene in Mulan. I don't know why, but it always makes me think of the scene in Mulan.
I mean, no, very similar vibes.
Yeah.
It's the opposite action, like.
My number 1 is Civil War. Between Winter Soldier and Civil War, I go back and forth. I think both are actually, outside of comic book movies, good films. The airport scene and the Tony, Bucky, Cap fight scene really push it over for me. These were just really great movies. I think Civil War, I was glad to see it high on a few of our lists. Not so much yours, Shannon. But I think it really is the kind of linchpin MCU film. I think it's probably one of the most important.
It is. Like, I mean, and we kind of talked about this, a couple hours ago. Like, some of these movies, it's hard to rank because they're so important to each other.
Yeah.
Like Age of Ultron, but Age of Ultron I still have at the bottom.
Yeah, it belongs there. It's bad.
Yeah.
We've talked about a bunch of those big set pieces, and this movie has big set pieces, but the fights aren't the big set pieces. Like things are going around the fight that sets up the world altering things, but these are all personal fights, like the end of Civil War. But I think they work better. And one of my favorite scenes in any of these movies has to be the elevator in here, and they pay out, and then they pay it off again. Because one of the things I think it might have been a comic book panel that I might have co-opted, but I always wanted to see and they did it in this, and they show you what happens. But I always wanted to see in a Batman film or something where a bunch of terrorists or hostage takers try and kidnap Bruce Wayne. You see the elevator door close, and the next thing you should just see is the elevator door open, Bruce straightening his tie, and everybody's on the ground. And this felt like what that scene would have been.
Yeah.
I always love the big fight scenes that are more one-on-one and more personal. Those are always the ones that I like the best. Which
I know we've been at this.
Is something with Winter Soldier that I like,
Yeah. We've been at this a while, but somebody in the chat asked a while ago, what's your favorite Stan Lee cameo from all of them?
Oh.
A lot of votes for Tony Stank. A lot of votes for Tony Stank on that one.
That's not my favorite.
Minus Captain Marvel.
My favorite.
Which one?
Where he bumps into Tony and he's supposed to be like Hugh Hefner.
Oh yeah, that one's good.
Yeah. I go with Captain Marvel because it puts Mallrats now in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which makes me laugh.
That's a good one, I guess.
And hearing about Kevin Smith crying over that, like literally.
Yeah.
Another great one is that's a
The
good
Watcher,
one.
yeah.
Infinity War is great too on the bus with the kids, especially again the throwback to the first Avengers. Like, what, y'all have never seen aliens before? Like, that one was really great.
Yeah, I don't know, man. There's so many good ones. I mean, it was nice to see him in Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it was like, So.
I mean, non-MCU, I think actually is my favorite one is Teen Titans Go to the Movies.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I like Big Hero 6.
I love cameos!
Big Hero 6 is a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Baymax is joining the next phase of Avengers.
When people walk up to me at work and ask if we have any Marvel photos, I'm like, we have a Big Hero 6 photo. And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, well, it's Marvel, so... Like, I don't know how to explain that to you. Well, we did it.
We did
That's it, guys.
3 hours later. You could have watched Endgame during this time.
I mean, yeah. We're not as depressing, though.
I agree, yes.
we have a happier ending, maybe, kind of.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to thank everybody for sitting through us in this and sitting through a lot of these countdowns we've done over the course of these last few weeks.
It's the last one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is going to be the last one. We capped it off with Marvel.
Man, we should have done Descendants.
Easy. One.
I love the Descendants.
Can I just ring zombies above the Descendants in that? Because it's the same thing.
We'll have to do DComs one day.
Yeah.
Someday.
Oh, man. That would take forever.
Yeah.
I think we just have to do a top 7 for that, so everybody picks something.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
7.
But I really want to thank everybody out there who's been watching all of these things. Really, as a lot of our lives, a little bit of a spotlight during the day when we can't do anything else is to be here with you guys. I think this is my last of the daytime shows. I will definitely be back, and I think a lot of us will be on different shows on Sunday night for the cast member pantry of charity show, which, guys, please tune in and donate if you can. It's a good cause. A lot of these cast members, they're already barely making, a lot of them barely make do as cast members, as we know. And some of them haven't gotten any unemployment yet. It's just a good charity.
Tomorrow. That's tomorrow, not Sunday.
Oh, it's tomorrow night? I thought it was Sunday night.
Tomorrow night, 9 p.m.
Right.
I have to redo my schedule then. But guys, please tune in. The cast members who put this up are incredible. They got they're feeding like 200 families a day or more now.
It's awesome.
So they could really use whatever help we can give them. So thank you guys for everything, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks for watching.
Bye. Thank you.